Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
By the way, yesterday somebody said they were all mad at you, Ian. They said, I guess they were mad at me. I don't know. They were mad. And they said, does Ian even I feel like Ian doesn't even like the fact that his prediction is, again, being the number one Titan pundit this year, that Ian doesn't even like that. And now I'm looking at the YouTube chat from the Midday Show. My guess is the Midday guys were like, nobody thought the Titans were going to be this bad because somebody said, no, Ian predicted it. So, Ian, congratulations again.
Thank you very much.
However that makes you feel. So how do we feel about this game on a Fireball Hot Take Friday? This week, the worst of the worst. You versus the Patriots. They need to bring Michael Buffer out here to say, let's get ready to fumble instead of let's get ready to rumble. It's that bad between these two teams. When I first got into football, the Cleveland Browns were an expansion team. They had just come back, and the Cincinnati Bengals might as well have been an expansion team. And when those two teams played each other, I used to think, God, I feel bad for those teams. And the fact that that's a game and, oh, God. And now that's you. Now that's you. In fact, I was thinking about last year, you hosted the Panthers in a game. And even that wasn't as bad as what this is, you versus the Patriots. So, again, we're all going to watch Sunday because that's what we do. And I'm not going to ask where this whole I root for the Titans no matter what stuff comes from, because I get it. I get it. Nobody likes to lose, even though for some reason owners and teams, they choose people that are good at losing as opposed to people that know how to win. It's like your owner, 7-5 in first place wasn't good enough for you then, but now these guys stink, and it's like, oh, no, it'll be great. But I understand where it comes from. The people that are like, I don't understand you. It's really on Twitter. I don't understand you Titan fans that are poo-pooing this season and poo-pooing this. I will never root for the Titans to lose. Well, that's you. I'm not the same way. I know the whole Herm Edwards, you play to win the game. I know. And that's exactly how a coach should feel. But I'm not a coach. So with that, let me say this. Go Patriots this weekend. Now, look, I covered the Patriots when I was up in New Hampshire for a year on the radio there. I did start to like the Patriots. Obviously, working with Floyd every day, who was a Patriot. You know, he loved the Patriots and loved Belichick and loved Brady, and I loved Brady. You guys know, if you listen to this show, you know that I love Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. You know that. But this doesn't have anything to do with that. This has everything to do with where the Titans are right now and where the Titans need to be. The Titans are not going to beat Minnesota this year, and they're not going to beat Washington. I think we can all agree with that. They likely aren't beating Houston, and yes, I know Houston lost last night, and they kind of look crappy in losing yesterday, but you're not going to beat the Texans. And you probably won't beat Indianapolis on the road, considering that that you threw for 95 yards and lost to Indy without DeForest Buckner or Jonathan Taylor at home. Cincinnati's kind of a wild card. I think they kind of suck, but they also have Joe Burrow. And who knows about Jacksonville? They seem to be the same level as Tire Fire as you are. So you might be able to win those games or win one of those two. The most you can win this year, the most you can win is 5 games, period. You can't win more than that. You've already got one. There are 10 more to go. And again, you're not beating Minnesota. You're not beating Washington. You're not beating Houston in those 2 games. You're not beating, I don't think you're beating Indy, so that's 5. So the best you can do, 5 wins. And I don't want to win 5 games this year because 5 games will do 2 things. Number one, 5 games, if we're basing this off of last year, in the draft, but it might be even worse this year because there are so many bad 1 and 2 win teams this year. Winning 5 games would put you around pick number 6 or pick number 7. And in a draft that doesn't have a lot of first-round talent and doesn't have a lot of, doesn't really have first-round quarterbacks outside of Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, that's a bad thing. You don't want to be picking 6 or 7. You want to be picking 1 or 2. And secondly, 5 games is just enough for every person in that building to go to bed at night thinking they did the best they could and put all the blame on Will Levis for 2024, and everybody keeps their jobs, and everybody gets to pick the next quarterback. And I'm sorry, but I don't want that either. I am not inspired, as you well know, by Chad Brinker's empty word salads about his NBA or his convoluted job responsibilities. And I was told last offseason by people both inside that building and outside that building to give Rand Carthon a second chance. And I watched them spend $230 million and ignore right tackle. I heard Brian Callahan, special teams coach yesterday, whom he won't fire, hold a press conference. It looked like Elmer Fudd was up there trying to. If not, it'll be the same deal next year. They'll sign some names in free agency. They'll brag about how great they are. They'll draft a quarterback. They'll stink, and then they'll all get fired. And in comes a new GM and a new coach and a new coordinator for your young quarterback, and they didn't pick him. I'm not doing that anymore. It'll be the same deal next year, and they'll get to make the choice on the quarterback. The same thing you did for Marcus Mariota. And years ago, we played that Floyd audio earlier this week of when Anthony Richardson got benched, of Floyd saying like, hey, I know that everybody out there, doesn't want to sit quarterbacks, but we sat McNair and we ran to the media and we said, media, don't come bother us. Like, don't come to us every game if we don't win and say, when's McNair playing? He's not playing for 2 years. Well, in that, I listened to it, and Floyd was like, one of the things that probably set Marcus back was the constant changing of the offensive coaches. Well, that's what you're going to do. When you let these guys pick the next quarterback, win 4 games, they all get fired, then in comes a new coach and a new scheme and a new GM, and they might not even like that quarterback. And I don't want to do that. So I think it is incredibly honorable and a sign of your character that you want your team to fight no matter what. That some of you do not like to lose. And some of you will not cheer for the Titans to lose. I get it. I understand. Again, we want our teams to win. That's the whole point of this, right? So I get that. But let me remind you, in 2015, the last game of the year, the last place Titans played Indianapolis in a completely meaningless game. The starting quarterbacks in that game were Josh Freeman for the Colts, who was signed that week to play quarterback, and Zach Mettenberger for the Titans in what I believe would be his last NFL game. And I cheered for Indy to win. And I remember doing the pregame show that Sunday with Floyd and Derek was like, well, what's it matter if they win or lose? If you get the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick, you don't need a quarterback. You just drafted Mariota. What's the big deal? And I understood. And there were the same discussions about, no, don't root for them to lose. And I just thought, screw all that. I want the number 1 pick. I remember Michael Griffin got beat for a touchdown in his final Titan game. And I thought to myself, Michael Griffin, sir, I salute you for doing your part to get the Titans the number 1 pick. They lost. They got the pick. They didn't need a quarterback, but they turned it into a massive package that made them good again and included Derrick Henry. I'm not saying you don't get Derrick Henry if you don't lose that game at Indianapolis, because I don't know. Cleveland also paid or got a king's ransom from Philadelphia, who moved up for the number 2 pick in that draft. But those set of circumstances led the Titans to have 3 second-round draft choices. And with the third of those 3 second-round draft choices, they drafted Derrick Henry. So in the end, thank you, Zach Mettenberger. Thank you, Michael Griffin. Thank you guys for doing your part that led to the Titans selecting the best player who ever put on that uniform. He's going to be the first Hall of Famer that was truly a Tennessee Titan. Bruce Matthews and Kevin Mawai and those guys played. Andre Johnson, they played for the Titans, but they're really Hall of Famers for other teams. Derrick Henry will be a Hall of Famer for the Titans. And again, you can go right back to that game against Indianapolis in 2015. That's where I think we are now. Where if you lose on Sunday to this terrible, terrible Patriot team, it will be a sign that you may win one or two more games the rest of the year. If you win one or two more games the rest of the year and finish at 2-15 or 3-14, you'll have the number 1 or number 2 pick. I think it is more likely than not, if you win 2 or 3 games, Amy fires everybody. That's what you need. So with that being said, go Patriots. Go Patriots this weekend. I hope Drake May comes in here, and I hope he looks like a superstar. I hope Will Levis gets back out there, and I hope he rolls the ball on the ground to the other team. I find it honorable that some of you want the Titans to win no matter what. I got it. But I'm worried about how the Titans can be good again. I'm worried about what this team's going to need in order to build themselves to be a contender in 2025 and 2026 and 2027. I'm not worried about feeling good that my team's not the worst in the league on Sunday. I've already come to terms with that. So again, go Patriots. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And there's another little element about this game on Sunday, about the winning and the losing and if you win on Sunday, it's not just dropping. I mean, it could be catastrophic if you win Sunday. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's 1025 The Game.
No one anywhere across the country, unless they have a bet, is going to tune into a Patriot game. And the amount of teams that are in that category, like you can't watch the Carolina Panthers. You can't watch the Tennessee Titans.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I know they won last week, but you can't watch the Cleveland Browns. You can't watch the Jacksonville Jaguars. You can't watch the Vegas Raiders or the New England Patriots. New Orleans was hopeful there for a second, but they've quickly gone into the territory where you cannot watch the New Orleans Saints.
They've cratered. Those first couple of games, they were putting up 40-plus points.
Can't watch them.
They have the longest losing streak in the league.
You cannot watch the New York Giants.
Oh, yeah, no, they're brutal.
They are brutal.
They're competitive in their games, but they're unwatchable from the quarterback down. That's 8 teams you just can't watch. Can you watch the Miami Dolphins? Maybe. Can you watch the New York Jets? Barely. Okay.
They're rough.
Indy is unwatchable.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Okay. Unwatchable. Okay. So I think there's 10 teams, but somewhere between 8 and 10 teams in the league, I'm sorry, are just flat out nothing to see there. And you're one of them.
That was Mike Felger on 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. I was wondering, what are they talking about in Boston when it comes to the Titans and the Patriots? Or what are they? And it's just listen to all these teams that are absolutely terrible in the NFL. And, boy, there are a lot of them. I mean, when he went through that list, it's yeah, I don't like watching the Giants play.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't like watching the Saints play.
Raiders.
I don't like watching any of these teams play. And so, look, I haven't evaluated Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, so I can't tell you that I have an opinion if they're only the 2 guys, if the Titans finish with a 1-2 pick or whatever. I'm not a Quinn Ewers fan anymore. Carson Beck and Jalen Milroe have kind of let me down. So if there's 2 guys this year, the only way you get the option to draft one of them is to finish last or second to last. And right now, you're number 2. So, again, if the season ended today, you'd be able to pick one of the 2 quarterbacks. If you win Sunday, all of a sudden, you're in some deep doo-doo. Because if you look at the bottom of the league, there are so many bad teams. If you look at the bottom of the league, you're 1-6. Let's say you win. Now you're 2-6. New England is 2-7, so they would jump you, and they'd have the tiebreaker. Jacksonville, New Orleans, Vegas, Cleveland, the Giants, all 2-6. And Miami is 2-5, and they're going nowhere. And they play Buffalo this week, so they're going to get smoked, and you beat Miami, so Miami jumps you too. So there's a chance, if you win on Sunday, that you could be picking 7th, 8th, something like that. I'm not going through. I am not. No. I am not going through this season with what we're going to have to watch. The massacre that is going to come next week on the road to the Chargers. The massacre that you're going to get when L'Jarius Sneed happens to be hurt again and doesn't play against Justin Jefferson. I am not watching Houston beat you by 87 points. To pick 9th? No. So, again, and all these teams stink. Carolina stinks. New England stinks. New Orleans stinks. And they will draft a quarterback if they get in range to draft it. They are not committed to Derek Carr. They will draft a quarterback. Vegas stinks. They will draft a quarterback. Jacksonville stinks. Now, I do think Jameis Winston is going to do us a solid by being the quarterback in Cleveland, because I think Cleveland actually has a solid team. So Cleveland will win 7 games or something like that, and we won't have to worry about them for the bottom. But if you win Sunday, and I understand, the players they don't care about the draft, and the coach doesn't care about the draft. The coach just wants to stay being the coach. But if you win on Sunday, all of a sudden, your opportunity to pick one of the quarterbacks for you people out there that are like, we need Shedeur Sanders. Well, you won't get to pick him. We need Cam Ward. You won't get to pick him unless you want to trade next year's first. Unless you want to move up, say you're at 6 and you want to move up to 2 so you can take Cam Ward, well, you better give up next year's number 1. So there is a lot on the line. A lot on the line on Sunday. And you need to lose. Let's go to your phones. Your phone lines are by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Let's go to Cam, who's going to kick us off here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Cam, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared, how are you?
Good.
So I'm like you. I kind of the season's over. You know, anything that happens from this point on will just hurt the Titans as far as winning. But what good does it? Because I mean, John Robinson made that move and took the first pick and got Derrick Henry and the second rounders. But you leave it up to Rand Carvon and Chad Brinker, and who are they're going to draft? Mookie Betts to play safety, or you know what I mean? That's what I got.
Well, I hear what you're saying. That's why you need to go 2-15. Like, I know, paper bag season. I know it's awful. You need to do it. Like, we're already here. There's no chance of this team being good this year. None. You know what the newest excuse is that they're peddling out there now? It's, well, the fans like the moves in the offseason too, as if the fans don't have regular day jobs and aren't grinding away at the tape and it's not their job to know who's good. Fans, I mean, you could sign some Scarbini, tell them it's good. And so what? I mean, hell, I had fans yelling at me every day during the offseason about how PT could play right tackle. But again, that's what they're holding on to. The ball didn't bounce our way. The fans like the move. We added draft capital with these trades. Yeah, 7th round picks. Woo! That's going to rebuild the team. If you go 2-15, I don't think Amy can justify bringing these guys back. I don't think she can do it. I do not think that she can have a 2-win season after those guys spent $230 million when they are moving into a new stadium, when the owner is chasing after her own mistakes now. I think she knows in her heart, because she's not stupid. I think she knows in her heart that firing John Robinson in the middle of the season was a mistake. I think she knows it. And because of that, she'll never admit it, and that's fine. But because of that, I'm sure that then led her to, well, I want to start over, and I want to do it my way, and then she fired Vrabel. And I don't know if you're a person, how you could fire a coach like Mike Vrabel. And this includes me. And I would have fired Vrabel, and I would have cleaned house at the end of last year. But I don't know how you could fire Mike Vrabel, hire Brian Callahan, watch what we're watching right now, and not think to yourself, uh-oh. I mean, that's I don't know how you could do that. And I'm serious about that. Like, I don't know how a coach, I don't know how a GM, I don't know how, again, an owner could do that. So she knows she's on the clock. See, those were the A.J. Brown moves for her. Everyone gets mad at John Robinson. He traded A.J. Brown. That was his move. For her, it were these moves. You win 2 games, I don't think she can bring them back. And she shouldn't bring them back. So, again, that's why I'm pro 2 games. Win 2 games. Trey's up next here on our program. Trey, thank you for calling the show. Thank you for waiting. What's up, Trey?
Hey, buddy. How you doing? Hey,
Good.
I heard what you were saying earlier about Will Levis and everything, but do you think it would be a bad business decision for him to go out there and lose every game because his career is in jeopardy? If he doesn't win, it's over for him. And do you think that if he's it doesn't have any injuries, will he start every game for the rest of the season? And do you think we will actually really get a quarterback in the first round? Thank you, bud. Have a good day.
Yep, thank you, Trey. I got some thoughts on this whole Will Levis thing because, I mean, again, Will Levis hadn't played in 2 weeks, and the last 2 weeks have been the 2 most disastrous weeks probably of the season. And so I got a thought on this whole Will Levis thing. We'll do that coming up next. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company on 1025 The Game. Got to tell you about Fireball Whiskey. Nothing goes down as smooth and tastes as good as ice-cold Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. I absolutely love Fireball, and given some of the football that we got to watch around here, trust me, I think a lot of us would enjoy when it comes to Fireball Whiskey to, well, let's ice down a little bit as we watch some of these games. But be sure to celebrate this weekend with Fireball Whiskey. Nothing goes down as smooth or tastes as great. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
No, I feel good. It's been a long process, but we'll see for Sunday. It's been, frustrating, but feel like I'm finally starting to get to a point where I'm comfortable with.
Feel more likely than not likely you'll be able to go Sunday?
Yeah, I don't know. To be determined. We'll see. Yeah.
Is it more going in back-to-back days? You got to do that. How is that been?
Yeah, good. That's part of the process is dealing with the recovery and the fatigue and that. So it was good to get out there and throw it around a little bit today, and felt pretty good.
That was Will Levis yesterday talking to the media about, we'll see where it's at. Try to see if it feels a little bit better. We'll see who he goes out there. Now, I told TD yesterday, I said, I have a take. There's even a take with a capital T. And I said, my take is this. I believe that when Will Levis told the Titans I can play against the Colts, they said, okay, he's going to play through the pain because that's what big boy quarterbacks do. So they put him out there and he had a terrible game. And after the game, he went to the press and he said, well, that interception I threw was because of my shoulder and it still hurts. And, kind of acting like a crybaby up there. Again, you never heard Steve McNair talk like that. And I think Brian Callahan heard that, knowing that deep down inside he kind of knew Levis was struggling, and said, no. If you aren't totally ready, then we need to make sure that we give you some time. So we're going to give you 2 weeks off to heal that shoulder. Okay. Are you sure? You said you weren't 100%. We're going to make sure you're 100%. And Levis was like, well, yeah, okay, coach, again, once he goes to the press and he says my shoulder's bothering me, he can't take it back. I think they probably went to Amy and they told Amy, hey, we're going to hold him back these 2 weeks because he's going to get his teeth kicked in against Buffalo and Detroit. And the entire city already thinks he's a complete and total bum anyways. And he probably thinks inside that he's a complete and total bum. So we're going to sit him for 2 weeks, let him heal, but really, keep him away from the Lions' den. And then we play the Patriots. And so he gets a couple of weeks to refresh, gets a couple of weeks to get a little bit more healthy, gets a couple of weeks, and now you get to go play one of the worst, if not the worst team in the NFL. I think it's brilliant. Now, if he doesn't play on Sunday, then this was a total conspiracy theory, and I'll admit to being wrong. But I think he is going to play on Sunday. And again, I go back to the fact that when he got hurt, before the Bills game, when they called up Trevor Siemian, and it was like, okay, well, now the other guy, Rudolph's going to play quarterback, and that's going to be their decision that they're going to have him out there and Siemian's back. Once that, all of a sudden, the Schefters and the Rappaports started reporting this is going to be a multiple week injury. And then I said, okay, now I know what they're doing. They're avoiding Detroit and Buffalo, and then they're going to bring him back out for the Patriots. Well, I have to give Will Levis a little credit, because over the last 2 weeks, the two Titans whose stocks I think have improved are, one, Nick Westbrook-Akine, who is the only player on the Titans who seems to show up and play like a real winner, and Will Levis. And I got to say, Will Levis' stock, in my opinion, has risen over the last couple of weeks, because after every game, the phones and the texts were Levis sucks, Levis this, Levis that, Levis. Then they put somebody else out there, and that guy sucked just as bad as Levis. So it's actually kind of an eye-opening thought process for me of, well, your special teams got you beat in Chicago, and your special teams got you beat in Detroit, and that didn't have anything to do with Will Levis. And your defense gave up a 70-yard run on the ground to Jahmyr Gibbs, and that didn't have anything to do with Will Levis. And Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. Ian. PT still sucked against the Buffalo Bills, and that didn't have anything to do with Will Levis. And the Titans still can't score in the second half with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, and that doesn't have anything to do with Will Levis. And Mason Rudolph threw an inexplicably horrendous interception on Sunday against the Lions. And that throw didn't have anything to do with Will Levis. And I bring all of this up because, again, I think Levis was, in the view of some fans, I think Levis was viewed as problem number one. That they looked at it and said, well, it's not Callahan's fault. It's not Rand's fault. It's not Chad's fault. It's not Amy's fault. It's Levis's fault. But now that we've seen Rudolph out there, and he stinks just as bad. This is Mason Rudolph that, last year started 4 games for the Steelers and didn't throw an interception. Now that we've seen Rudolph stink just as bad, it's like, well, hold on. And let's not forget that Malik, the guy who wasn't as good as either of them, and we know Malik's not as good as Will Levis, that Malik has gone to the Green Bay Packers, and Malik looks like a real quarterback now. So now you do blame the coach, and you do blame the GM, and you do blame the right tackle, and you do blame the special teams, and you do blame. So this is a big week for Will Levis because he's going to play, because this was the plan. Again, we're going to hold you up. No. You went to the press and said your shoulder was bothering you. So we're going to sit you for Detroit and Buffalo and see if we can salvage something. So this is a big week for Will Levis. Because you go out there, you lose to these Patriots. I mean, it's not getting any better then. Let's go to Will, who's up next on our phone lines here, 615-737-1025. Will, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared, I was listening to you earlier talking about us, I guess, potentially tanking just so we can get that number one pick. I agree with doing something like that. However, I would not want to use it on a quarterback. I would first fire basically everybody, Carthon, Callahan, whoever else, rehire somebody that's more qualified, do our homework and get the right people in place. And then I would literally sell that first round pick for a king's ransom to restart a true rebuild.
Can I ask you, Will, why you wouldn't? If you fired Carthon and Brinker and Callahan and everybody, which I'm not against, if you did that, wouldn't you let that person that you hired decide what to do with that first round draft pick?
Yes, but that's what I would do. I'm no GM, but I would think, are we really impressed with these quarterbacks? I'm not. I'd be favoring more like what Robinson did a few years back, where he got basically a king's ransom for a pick, and we became relevant again. So that's what I would do, but that's just coming from me.
Thank you, Will. So let me say this. Again, I go back to this new line that the Titans have invented that they've now pushed through some of their more friendly media arms. That is, well, the fans like the moves that they made in the offseason, so you can't be mad at them, which is such a joke, by the way. But I don't know what Will does for a living, but my guess is he has a real job. And if he's got a real job when it comes to, his life, he probably isn't grinding away at the tape, breaking down Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and Quinn Ewers and Travis Hunter and, I forget the guy's name. He's the tackle at LSU. Who's the top tackle on the board? I mean, I haven't even been grinding away at the tape on this stuff. But the Titans should. So I can't just sit here and say, okay, well, you know what? If you get the second pick, don't take the quarterback, but trade it away for all these extra picks and build up the team. I'm not against that. I'm also not against the fact that if I hire Rick Stillman to be the general manager of the Titans, or I hire Mark Dominic to be the general manager of the Titans, or I hire Thomas Dimitrov to be the general manager of the Titans, and they are in love with Cam Ward, then he says, like, hey, this is the guy. I don't have a problem with that either. That's why I hired that guy. But the reason why I want the number one pick and the number two pick is because it gives you options. If there is a player in this draft who is so good that he can change the game from his position, and there aren't that many of those players in the NFL, but Aaron Donald is an example of a player who you can literally get by. You can get to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff at quarterback with some nice officiating helping you out if Aaron Donald is on your team. TJ Watt, I think, is this kind of player. So if that player is available in this draft, let's say it's Travis Hunter. If he's that kind of player, you have the option to draft him. If you need extra second round picks and extra third round picks and you have the option to trade that pick back. And if one of these two quarterbacks is a star, you have the option to draft that guy. But I can't tell you which option they should take right now. And again, if I owned the team, it's funny to say, like, well, then I'd hire this guy, and then I would, no, that's his decision. Or at least I would hope that you would let them make that decision. So I'm with you for about 75% of what you said there, but the rest of it, not so much. Aaron says, what if the Titans keep losing and Amy Adams-Strunk is still clueless? Well, if you go 2-15 and Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker and Brian Callahan come back next year, then you can take out all your angst on the owner. And you can not show up, and she can build a new stadium with fans that don't like her. And, again, there is no reconciliation for bad ownership. Like, the owner doesn't get fired. The owner can't be fired. And it is what it is. But I have to imagine that it wouldn't be a great feeling. The NFL, when you open a new stadium, the NFL likes to give you a premium game. And they like to put it on Sunday Night Football. They don't like to open new stadiums with noon kickoffs on CBS. The way you open the stadium now, a noon kickoff on CBS against the Bengals, yeah, they're not going to do that. They'll put you on Monday Night Football. They'll put you on Sunday Night Football. They want to open a new stadium on TV. And they want to do it with a premium game. When the Rams opened their stadium, if you remember, go back to 2020, because, Ian, I do feel like that's the last big stadium that opened up was SoFi, right?
Yeah, maybe.
I'm trying to think off the
Minnesota?
top of my head.
Was Minnesota after that?
No, Minnesota, because I was in a wedding in 2019 in downtown Minnesota, and that building was there. I think Minnesota was 2018.
Okay.
Was when that building opened.
The Rams got their new one. Yeah.
I think it is SoFi. And so if you go back, the first game they played at SoFi Stadium was Sunday Night Football, Dallas at the Rams. Big game. The Chargers' first game in that building was the next week against Kansas City. So they want to give you a premium game. So if Amy keeps Rand and she keeps Brinker, they're going to blow it because they stink. And so you'll be the same or worse next year, and they will have spent another $100 million, and the team will suck, and it'll kind of be the same thing. And then she'll fire them. Now, you'll be in the cycle of suck because you will have let these guys pick your quarterback, and that is a recipe for disaster. But if she does that, then when she opens that new stadium on Sunday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers or against the Green Bay Packers or against the Kansas City Chiefs, it'll be all Green Bay Packer fans. It'll be all Pittsburgh Steeler fans. And I don't think she wants that. Because she's got the money now. We ain't worried about that. But it's everything else. She's not going to want that. Robert Kraft's making money hand over fist on the New England Patriots and on Patriot Place. But I can promise you, he doesn't enjoy the fact that this team's this bad. So that's what happens if if you keep losing and she's still clueless and she keeps these guys. It is what it is. 615-737-1025. Somebody said the Raider Stadium in Vegas. I'm guessing that opened the same year in 2020.
Yeah, that's
and I believe they opened on Monday Night Football. On that, remember how? Well, no, because the Titans were on Monday Night Football. I think they played week 2. And I'll have to look it up. 615-737-1025 here on the program.
Says it also opened in 2020. So,
do we know what the first regular season game was? I feel like it was a Monday Night Football game, and John Gruden got fined like $250,000 because he wouldn't wear his mask.
Says it opened July 31st of 2020. I don't know the first game. I'd have to double check that again, though.
So, hold on. Let me just pull it up. I'll do a little simple search. Raiders 2020 schedule. They must have played the first game on the road. And then that was because remember, it was like a big controversy that Gruden got fined for wearing a mask below his nose, and people got mad at him. And again, that's your business, not. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. So they were at Carolina week 1, Monday Night Football against New Orleans at home week 2. So they want to open that stadium in prime time, and they're going to bring in Pittsburgh, or they're going to bring in Dallas, or they're going to bring in, and I don't think Amy wants that. 615-737-1025 on the program. Now, there is one thing that I can't imagine that we're not all on the same page with this. Even the Bobos in the YouTube chat, distinguished gentlemen and witty banner and you guys. We'll get to it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
We've heard from a couple of players over the past couple of weeks that they feel like the coaching is there and then simply they are just not executing it there. What is maybe the disconnect here between, say, a practice and then in the game having these hiccups in a lot of these games? What's the disconnect there?
Yeah, I appreciate the player saying that, but at the end of the day, it's on me. I apologize after the game. I apologize to the guys. I didn't have them ready. We'll be ready this week.
Do you feel any pressure about your position within the organization after 3 games now of unacceptable special teams play, in your words?
No.
Cole Anderson saying he don't feel any pressure with his job here in what was an otherwise disastrous press conference yesterday for Colt Anderson, the Titans special teams coach. He says they'll get it fixed. He says it's on him. He says they'll get it fixed. He says Ian, I think we're all on the same page on something. Me, you, the fans, the coach, the owner, the general manager. I think everybody has to be in agreement with what I'm about to say right here. I will be shocked if people disagree with what I'm about to say. I appreciate the fact that Cole Anderson got up there when asked about being worried about his job status and saying, no, he's not. And that's great. And I appreciate Brian Callahan. If he's not going to fire the guy, you got to have the guy's back. And I get that. But if there is a special teams blunder this week, he's got to go. A single one, a punt blocked, a punt return for a touchdown, a field goal blocked, a fumbled kickoff, a fumbled punt return, a bad snap. I don't care. If the special teams this week has another meltdown after last week, Brian Callahan, again, after a week where Brian Callahan had to answer questions from me about why he still has faith in this guy, if they blow it again this week, he's got to go. He's got to go. And if Brian Callahan won't fire him if he messes up again, then Brian Callahan's got to go too. Like, if you go to Callahan and say, hey, he's got to go, and Callahan says, no, I believe he's a good coach, trust me, then it's like, it's either you or him. But he will not have a job on Monday if they blow it again. And I know the rule we have on this program, nobody gets in trouble for something they haven't done, but let's be real about the expectations around here when it comes to competence and the special teams. Ian, do you agree with that? If there is a special teams meltdown, he's got to go.
Meltdown, like just one gaffe mistake. That's all it's going to take at this point, huh?
Yes.
Just one
if
more?
they get a punt blocked,
Okay.
he's gone.
Field goal block.
Gone.
Punt return for a touchdown.
Gone.
Kickoff return for a touchdown.
Gone.
Fumble muff punt.
If it costs you the game, gone.
I don't know about Callahan gone, but I guess I could see it. Yeah. I don't know what else they could do at this point, though.
Well, again, it's like, hey, if Callahan won't fire him after another one, then he's got to go. Like, it's like, if you won't fire him, then you got to go too. Which is then then he'll fire him. Like, then he will fire Cole Anderson. Trust me. But if Brian Callahan can't bring himself to fire Cole Anderson after another meltdown, that tells me all I need to know about Brian Callahan. I mean, I'm already disappointed in Brian Callahan that he's not firing him right now, to be completely blunt. And I was listening to Robbie this morning, and Robbie was like, he heard the press conference with Cole Anderson. He's like, the more I listen to these guys talk, the more I'm like, you know what? Jared's right, clean house. Now, again, he's not saying that he thinks I'm right, they should clean house, but he's getting there with the idea of cleaning house. And let's not forget how good this coaching staff was, according to Rand Carthon this offseason on Bussin' with the Boys.
And the one thing that stood out with Cali was he had a depth chart of coaches. And I'm not saying when I say a depth chart, and he literally had a 3 deep. But it wasn't just like, all right, I want this guy, and if I can't get this guy, then this guy's the backup, and if I can't get him, then this. No. He had, these are 3, tier 1, here's 3, tier 2, here's 3, tier 3. And he had that for every single position. And so you knew looking at that, like, this guy's put a lot of thought process into this, you know, and he's well thought out, he's well researched. And I can say, because I was looking at it the other day, like we legitimately got number one on every one of his positions.
Damn. He had his old man.
He did not have his old man on the list. He was and I told in the interview, I was like, hey man, elephant in the room. What's up with Pops?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
are we trying to he was like, hey man, honestly, we haven't had the conversation.
Okay. But again, the big thing in there, we got number one in every choice. Well, if this is your number one choice and you're keeping him, oh, woof. Let's go to Joe, who's up next here on the program. Joe, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what the whole problem is, and it's never going to change until they get Amy to sell out to somebody that knows that really has a love for football. There's a lot of rich millionaires out there that do it. Until that happens, it's never going to change. She needs to get rid of it. She needs to go and get into business she likes better, like a flower shop or something.
Yeah, Joe, thank you for your incredibly sexist call. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, I know the flout really. Here's the deal. Owner's not selling the team, period. It's not going to happen. Stop talking about it. And we have to remember that between 2015 and 2022, she was a good owner, which means she has it in her. I hope. 615-737-1025. The Predators. Woof. I mean, holy crap. Last night, they get beat 5-1, and we've hit a line of demarcation. So I got a quick thought on that. We'll get to your phones as well. Stillman & Company, 1025 again. Hey, I want to tell you about Window Nation. I absolutely love Window Nation, and the Window Nation experts know their stuff. They came to my home. They gave me the full presentation. They showed me the good, better, best models, the energy efficient models. And then I said, okay, what windows do I need to replace? And they told me I didn't need to replace any windows. And that told me not only do they know their stuff, but they are honest. So honest. And experts say that heating costs are increasing up to 23% this winter. Don't want that. And if your windows aren't from Window Nation, your money is literally going out the window. They have some of the best insulated windows so your heat stays inside. And right now, get these amazing windows at 50% off. Plus, you could save even more money with 0% interest for 5 years. Hurry, because the sale ends November 30th. So schedule your fast in-home estimate right now by calling 866-90Nation or by visiting windownation.com. Again, get these amazing windows, these amazing energy-efficient windows at 50% off. And to save even more with 0% interest for 5 years. 866-90Nation, windownation.com. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063. The game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. You know, I feel like this early part of the hockey season is kind of like the doctor's Hippocratic oath, the do no harm, is kind of the philosophy. Like early in the season, look, you're not going to be ready for playoff hockey. The intensity is not going to be the same as it should be in March leading into the playoffs. You're not going to have your line set in stone. You're going to have guys getting used to one another and adjusting to a new system. You're going to lose games you should win, and then you're going to win games you probably should have lost. You're going to get some good goaltending performances. You're going to get some bad goaltending performances. It's all kind of a mixed bag, but for the most part, early hockey season, whatever. But then there are the teams that dig themselves into really deep holes. And it's like we had Barry Trotz on when they started 0-5. And I said to Barry, the stats are what the stats are. And they say that teams that are 0-5, and he finished the sentence and said, don't make the playoffs. And he's right. And I thought the Predators were fine this time last week after they beat Chicago and then on Saturday when they beat Columbus. And I said, okay, 3-5. They're fine. Most of the league was 500, 3-5. You're okay. You get a point the other night at Tampa. And then they got smoked last night by Edmonton, who was without Connor McDavid. And 10 games is a line of demarcation in the NHL. And I hate to say it, but through 10 games, the Predators are not good enough. 3-6-1 is unacceptable. Losing 5-1 last night is unacceptable. And while I understand that it takes time for teams to gel, my patience is starting to wear a little thin. Now in Boston, and I don't even know what the record of the Bruins is, but the one game that the Predators dominated was the Bruins. In Boston, I've been listening to some Boston radio this week because the Titans are playing the Patriots, and they're talking about whether or not they should fire Jim Montgomery.
They got smoked last night. I didn't see the final, but I know they gave up 8 goals at least.
Are they getting like waxed every game?
I don't know.
It sounds that way if they're talking about firing Montgomery this early into the season.
I don't know about waxed every game, but they're definitely down in the standings. I haven't really paid much attention to the standings yet, just because it's so early. Oh, they're 4-6-1. They're the same as the Preds.
Okay, so they're the same as you, and they're talking about firing the coach. I'm not saying that they should fire the coach. And not only am I not saying that, but I would give it until Thanksgiving before we start talking about the coach. But I know Barry Trotz and I know this organization. Burnett's probably getting the entire year no matter what. And again, I'm not advocating that they fire him. I'm just telling you that this sport, they go very quickly to the coach, in case you guys haven't noticed. But to me, the big moments in a hockey season early on are the 10-game mark and U.S. Thanksgiving. And they failed the 10-game mark. Think of it like the midterm for the first part of the year. Failure. F. That's what they got. And I think Vingan just sent me a text, some stat that where the Predators sit right now, they have like an 8% chance of making the playoffs. Since 2013-14, when the NHL introduced its wild card format, 14 of 176 teams that were at least 4 points out wound up making the playoffs, which is just shy of 8%. That's bad. And if you're not in the playoffs on U.S. Thanksgiving, you have about a 25% chance of making it. That's not good enough. Not for the expectations this team had. Not after the season they had last year. Not after the additions they made in free agency. Not after the contracts that have been signed around here. This isn't good enough. But what's happened so far this year is almost the exact opposite of what I've expected. I expected this team to start off good because there was so much energy. And I think they, again, hockey early in the year, it's kind of about who really wants it. And I figured that they wanted it more than the other teams. So I expected them to start off hot, be firmly in the playoffs at Thanksgiving, and be battling it out for second and third. And then I was worried, we're going to sit here in April and say, are they peaking too soon? Like, what do we make of it? I don't know. But so far, it's been the exact opposite. And a lot of people are talking about, well, Stamkos isn't scoring, and he said about 87 posts, and they're not getting it on the power play, which is supposed to be dynamite with Andrew Burnett coaching it and the players they have on it. And Soros is letting some in. And I'm going to tell you what my biggest problem with this team is right now. The biggest problem for me right now are the bad players, or I should say the bottom of the roster guys that last year, when this thing got going, they played a big part in it. Michael McCarron, Kiefer Sherwood was a part of that. Now, he's not on this team this year, but he was a part of it. Cole Smith, Mark Jankowski. You know, it seems like when the Predators get hot throughout the course of the year, there's always some sort of influx of guys that weren't good enough to make the team out of camp who ultimately find themselves firmly implanted in the roster. You know, Austin Watson was an example of that he got called up that 2017 season because they went to Detroit. Everyone got food poisoning. They had to call up a bunch of guys, and he got in the lineup and stayed in the lineup until Game 6 of the Cup final. But this year, the bottom guys, the guys that shouldn't have to be adjusting to the system or learning to gel because they've all played together. Michael McCarron, -9. Cole Smith, -8. And I'm pretty sure McCarron's going to be out of the lineup tomorrow night because Andrew Burnett benched him in the second period last night, didn't put him out there in the third. Lazan, -6. Yuso Parson has played in 2 games, -4. That's terrible. And again, these guys can be replaced. You know, I said last week after they started 0-5, I'm like, they need to make some changes. They need to flip the roster a little bit. Well, you're not going to flip the roster with Stamkos or Marchessault. You're going to flip the roster by bringing up Zach LaRue, which they did. But I was thinking they needed to bring up 3 or 4 guys. They've already brought up Delgado, and they've already brought up LaRue. And I'm thinking that they need to bring up some other guys now, you know, because the guys that did it last year, the bottom 6 forwards, the fourth line guys, the grit, the identity, the guy, remember, they started them every game. They're not doing it this year. And I cannot waste the beginning of the season on Michael McCarron. Like, I'm fine with waiting for Stamkos. I'm not okay with waiting for Michael McCarron. So what I would do if I were the Predators, I'd call up Vinny Hinostroza from Milwaukee. He's kind of a journeyman. Yeah, he's kind of a Scarbini. Didn't make the team out of camp, but he's in Milwaukee. So far, so good. Bring him up. He's got NHL experience. You know, he was on the Blackhawks a couple years ago. Put him in there. You know, hey, you're fourth lining it right now. Maybe one of these guys, Ozzy Weisblatt, who Barry just loves every time he talks about him. Maybe another young guy. Bring him up. Get McCarron out of there. Get Smith out of there. Get Jankowski out of there. Get some of these guys at the bottom out of there and see if the new guys you bring up can at least hold the line as opposed to blow it the way that McCarron and those guys have been blowing it. So right now, I'm fine with waiting for Stamkos to find his game and Marchessault adjusting. Look, Marchessault made a play the other night against Columbus to win him the game.
How much longer do we need to wait for that, though?
On Stamkos and Marchessault?
Yeah.
Well, the other option is to fire the coach. So you're not firing Stamkos and you're not firing Marchessault. So
No.
what are you going to do?
I mean, nothing. But I'm just saying, like, how long before it starts to really become a problem?
I mean, I would say it's probably a problem now.
And that's the
but
thing.
As far as doing something about it,
they're the only 2 new forwards. That's the weird part. You know?
The only thing you can do when it comes, you can't trade those guys. You can't release them. You can't send them to you. You play them. The option is to fire the coach. And I don't think we're there. I don't think we're, again, if it's bad at Thanksgiving, we can reassess. And again, I think I asked Trotz, you know, after 0-5, I said, look, this is a fire the coach sport. So how long until all of a sudden it's, hey, I hate to say it, but there were high expectations that are not being met. And Trotz was like, no, we're going to work through this together. And I think Trotz is going to be more patient with a coach than 95% of the teams in the league. But to your point, like, well, what do we do if Stamkos and Marchessault don't get going and Stamkos keeps hitting the post? And the only real option you have is to fire the coach. So I'm willing to give that more time. What I'm not willing to give more time to, fourth line guys falling down right in front of Leon Draisaitl and him putting the puck in the net. That's what I'm not okay with. But one texter into the text line says, our cohesiveness isn't there at all. It's very sloppy. Agreed. Which means that moving guys out of the lineup isn't something I'm going to be upset about. 615-737-1025. Corey Curtis, News 2, will join us next on the program. But first, into Sports Talk, 8:30 a.m. this Sunday for coverage of the Xfinity 500. Coverage will begin at 1 o'clock. Coverage also available at the GameNashville.com. And let's give away a pair of tickets to see Darryl Hall at the Ryman Auditorium on Tuesday, November 19th. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you will go see Darryl Hall at the Ryman on Tuesday, November 19th. Corey Curtis next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game. Join me, Chris Sanders, and D. Mace at John Bon Jovi's Nashville this Sunday for the award-winning pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30, where we'll talk about the Titans. Boy, I tell you, we got a lot to talk about on the award-winning pregame show. And the award-winning pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sun Deck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Corey Curtis, News 2, joins us on the program after a bunch of yelling and screaming that we did at each other last week. And it seems to be a trend with what I call the Rand Club, the people that still believe in where the Titans are headed. Corey, did Sunday's game against Detroit change your outlook on the Titans and the structure and where they're headed at all? Or are you in the same place where you feel like they're doing their best and they're on schedule?
I never said they're doing their best and they're on schedule. I just said I'm not ready to fire everybody. Okay. That's what I've said. Look, Sunday was pretty much what I expected to see. It was a really good team against a really struggling team that finds ways to lose, and they found ways to lose. So that was not a great big surprise for me to see that game. Is there disappointment in it? Sure. I mean, absolutely. But that was not a stunner.
Where are you on the whole Colt Anderson, Brian Callahan, kind of not firing Colt Anderson, which leads me to question if Brian Callahan ever holds anybody accountable over there, and then the disastrous Colt Anderson press conference? Well, I mean, where are you on all of that? Because you said that that's what you expected on Sunday, and if I had told you 52-14, I don't think you would have been surprised. But if I told you that Khalif Raymond would have almost set an NFL record, I think you would have been a little surprised. So what do you make about that?
Yeah, no, you're look, I have safe to say you've never seen a special team performance that horrible in your life.
Yes.
Yeah, on a professional level. I mean, high school football, I've seen some crazy stuff.
Or where it wasn't one guy either. You know what I mean? Like Del Greco, right.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is like after the first one, I was just like, punt it out of bounds. Just punt it out of bounds. And they refused. And so, yes, the press conference was not good. The press conferences aren't everything, but that wasn't great. I think it's I always bring up the Bobby April example, but Mularkey was on his third team as a head coach, and I think it was easier for him to make that kind of decision because he had 5 years of head coaching experience at that point. I think making that kind of decision for a first-year head coach is probably a little bit tougher, to do that, and maybe to him looks like a panic move. Like he's got his reasons for not doing it. I think we saw each other before the press. I don't know if I talked to you about it or somebody else on Monday, and we thought it was 50-50 whether Colt Anderson would still be employed because, I think you and I after the game because I'm not just basing it on the Detroit game. That unit.
Oh, it's been a disaster.
Yeah, which is amazing because I thought in the preseason their special teams were actually really good. Like I was like, wow, they're making plays, they're covering, and then they got rid of Hassan Haskins and Elijah Molden, and I don't think that those moves helped them.
Matthew Jackson.
Matthew Jackson. I don't think those moves helped them. But yeah, you got to do something. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again. And I know they're not doing the same thing over and over again. They're changing things up. But at some point, when you let the same people do it over and over again, it's that as well. So we'll see what if he's kind of like Will Levis at this point. That he's got the rest of the season to reclaim his spot. Because otherwise, the team will have to make a hard decision on that after the season.
Okay, so a serious question, though, about where this team sits. Corey Curtis with us.
Yeah.
You brought up Levis. Levis has stunk, but Rudolph went in for Levis, and he stunk too. And Malik Willis has gone in for the Green Bay Packers and is 2-0 as a starter, and he won the game in relief on Sunday, and Malik has been crazy efficient, and it is starting to make me think that Will Levis is not the problem here. That he is a symptom and not a cause, given the fact that I know he's better than Malik, and Malik, with a good organization, looks like a real quarterback. I mean, we did not see that Malik Willis, And that has me really questioning, A, the organization, and B, the coaching.
Well, look, Malik was clearly better this spring, or this preseason with the Titans. You know, the first 2 years he put in, and then whatever time he had with Callie and Hope. Packers are a good team. They're a good team. They're well coached. They've got a good offensive line. They've got, good weapons. And look, I know we can say the Titans is invested. The Packers are winning, and they've been winning for years, and they're continuing to win. And I think their coach does a nice job. He did a nice job when Malik gets in the game of not asking him to do things he doesn't do well. He curtails the game plans to what Malik does well. They run the read option and, put him on the move some. And, they don't have him throwing 35 passes a game when he's in there at quarterback. They've done a nice job of it, and he's grown. He's 3 years in, and he's grown. You're right. I think that game showed it wasn't all Will Levis with 10 and 14 points, but we also saw that some of it is Will Levis, because I don't think Calvin Ridley just got open that game. So what does it mean? It means it's on everybody. Will can be better. The offensive line is getting better. The receivers can be better. Everybody can be better. There's room for everybody to get better. But, it's not all on one person. One person didn't sink this ship.
Corey, I think it'd be a good thing for the Titans to lose on Sunday. I know that, well, that's not the winning mentality, but if they win, all of a sudden they're kind of in this like 6th or 7th in the draft order, and this isn't supposed to be a great draft. And I am a believer that they should fire everybody. And so 2-15 is kind of, I'm circling that saying, Lord, please give me 2-15 so we can fire everybody around here. If they lose to the Patriots on Sunday, how big of a knock is that?
Well, it's bad. I mean, but it's the NFL. You can win or lose every game. And I always say it's how you
I
look
don't think
doing
they could have
it.
won on Sunday against the Lions, Corey.
Well, we say that, but who had the Browns beating the Ravens?
Well, the Browns took out the biggest problem they had and replaced
But
it with
who had the
Jameis.
Browns beating the Ravens? Come on. Browns have been a clown show. All right.
Yeah,
So
but I
it's
mean,
the
they
NFL.
got Bozo out of the 3 rings.
They did, but it was still a massive upset. But my look, it's bad. But again, I'm more concerned with how they play because how they played to this point hasn't been good enough. I mean, and it's the mistakes, it's the pre-snap penalties, it's the turnovers, it's the inability to turn the ball over, on defense. It's the inability to play 4 quarters. If you told me they played 4 good quarters and they didn't turn the ball over and, they got beat by a last-second field goal, I go, yeah, that's disappointing, but I'd feel a lot better about it than what I've seen for 7 weeks.
Corey, what'd you think of Rand after the game saying the ball didn't bounce their way again?
Well, that wasn't the whole soundbite. There was stuff before that where they talked about, needing to be better. But again, I think I said this Monday morning, when you just say, hey, the ball hasn't bounced our way, that's kind of insulting to everybody because that's not the case. And I thought Callie was right. You make your own luck. They have 1 interception in 7 games, and they really haven't caused. Well, they've caused a fumble. They haven't caused a fumble and recovered it. The 2 recoveries they've got were off guys just dropping the football. They don't do enough. They don't do enough to create turnovers, and that's not the ball bouncing your way. That's you're not doing enough, and they need to do more and to indicate that you're doing enough and that the ball is not bouncing your way. That's not good enough. That's not good. So it's insulting to fans. And it's not holding your players accountable enough. I know those guys work hard. That's not a question, but they got to play better, and they know that.
I was surprised. I thought Callahan answered that question that I asked incredibly well because he did a great job of not completely throwing Rand under the bus, but also not co-signing on the idea that the ball hasn't bounced their way.
It was a respectful of, hey, that, I understand the statement and I understand that this is what I believe. And he's absolutely right. And the other thing is with luck is everybody has good luck and bad luck. Good teams overcome bad luck. So they don't seem as unlucky as bad teams where one bounce of bad luck costs you a game. It's like officiating. Good teams don't complain about officiating because they overcome the bad calls. The bad teams let a bad call beat them.
Fireball Hot Take Friday. What's your hot take this week?
I think they're going to win. I have no reason to believe that, especially coming off the Lions curse, because nobody wins after
Well,
they
the
play the
Patriots
Lions.
are awful. Like,
They
the Patriots
are.
are
They are, but-
god awful. And like, you say that like it's a good thing that you think they're going to win. I'm depressed
Well, I'm like Herm
at the
Edwards.
idea
I
that they're
always
going to
believe-
win.
Look, okay. The 49ers, it doesn't matter where they pick, they find players. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been drafting in the top 5 for 20 years, and they still stink. Okay? It doesn't matter as much where you pick as who you've got doing the picking. So, I like, if you trust Rand and Brinker and company, then you trust them to do their job no matter where they pick. If you don't trust them to do it, you bring somebody else in who can. But whether you're picking 1st or 7th or 13th, you go out and you find good players, because George Kittle wasn't a first-round pick. Deebo Samuel wasn't a first-round pick. Brock Purdy wasn't a first-round pick. I mean, I can go up and down the list of guys in this league who are good players who are not first-round picks, okay? Not even high first-round picks. And I can, like I said, there's the Jacksonville Jaguars of the world who pick first or in the top 10 forever, and they still stink. The Edmonton Oilers are finally good after picking in the top 5 for 15 years. I mean, it's not always the magic elixir. The magic elixir is having good people running your organization, identifying talent, developing it, and then keeping it around.
I do believe that the San Francisco 49ers did acquire, and I have to look it up to be sure. I do believe that they acquired George Kittle because they had the 2nd overall pick. And I don't know if you remember this, but they flipped it to Chicago, who was picking 3rd.
Was that the Trubisky trade?
Yeah, they scared Chicago into, hey, we might pick him at 2, so
Yeah.
trade up
And they
with
picked
us.
Was it Solomon Thomas they ended up picking?
Yeah, and he sucked anyways.
Yeah, but they, like you said, they got Kittle. It's like the Titans getting David Long in the Tannehill deal. Sometimes it's. But again, we're talking about guys picked in the 4th and the 5th round. There's a lot of people could have picked George Kittle before the 49ers ever got their hands on him. And it's
I'm sad.
identifying those guys.
I'm sad about the idea that they're probably going to win on Sunday. Corey, great stuff as always. Appreciate you.
All right, hey, we didn't yell at each other.
Well, I would say that last week was more fun, but that's still all the same.
Do you want to yell at each other? I'm sure we can find something.
Well, we just go back to whether or not they should fire these guys at the end of the year, and I'm sure we'll start yelling at each other over it.
No, we'll see where they're at the end of the year. And that's my thing is I still want to see where things go.
That's why I want to lose. That's why I
No.
want to lose on Sunday, because
Bah.
then on Sunday or on Monday there can't be they're still doing a good job, and in 2-15 they got to go, and that's how the Titans are going to get better, is by getting these guys out of here and getting good guys in here.
All right, David Tepper, you have a good day.
Be a lot better, David. I mean, people act like, thank you, Corey. People act like, if Jared owned the team, it'd be like Carolina. No, don't get mad at Jared. Your owner fired a general manager when you were in 1st place in the middle of the season. Jared would run your team much better than your owner runs her team. But that's a different discussion. Tune in to 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville tomorrow for MTSU football as the Blue Raiders on the road taking on UTEP. Pre-game begins at 1 o'clock. Kickoff is at 2:30. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville is presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. I love talking about Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Why? Because it goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. There's no better way to ignite the night than to do so with ice cold Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. This football season has been very, very difficult. The only way that I know how to get through it is to enjoy it with Fireball Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
It's funny, before we came out, AJ Highsmith and I were in, my office, and I'm straightening up my desk because my wife is coming to practice today. So Lord knows I got to have it clean before she comes in. And I was looking at the sheet that the offensive staff had broke down in terms of our needs going into the offseason. And, we could, I'll show you guys later, but we literally checked every single box from what we felt like we needed in starters to the furthest backup, and we were able to hit every single one of those. So, and that's what we really set out to do. Really set out to, wasn't necessarily like, hey, we got to flip this roster, but it was like, let's fill these holes and these needs that we have.
We checked every box. Boy, I tell you, every time they say something like that, I just play it over and over again because it's like, checked every box. You don't have a right tackle. So I have found the new excuse, and it makes me want to vomit every time I hear somebody say this. But I feel like every week we're starting to get a new excuse for the Titans. Every single week. Remember the first 2 weeks, it was, if the quarterback was better, we would be 2-0. Then after that, they got housed by Malik Willis, and then all of a sudden it was like, they had to start coming up with new excuses. Last week's excuse was it was Mike Vrabel's fault that they drafted a guard with the 11th overall pick. It was Mike Vrabel's fault that they drafted Will Levis in the second round. That was all Mike Vrabel. Forget about Rand Carthon, had nothing to do with last year's draft. Nothing. Even though he was the general manager for the draft, held a press conference before the draft, held a press conference after the draft, and was during the draft holding a press conference and chiding the media because he was upset about the negative questions he was receiving about picks that I guess Mike Vrabel made. Rand Carthon got more upset than Mike Vrabel about picks that supposedly Mike Vrabel made. Does that make sense to you? So that was last week's excuse. This week's excuse is this. Well, everybody liked the moves they made in the offseason. The fans liked the moves they made in the offseason. I don't even know where to begin tearing that apart. Number one, the old saying is, if you listen to the fans, pretty soon you're sitting with them. Which is, if you listen to the fans, they don't know what they're talking about because they're fans. You'll get fired because you'll lose. And guess what? If they did listen to the fans, they're doing a pretty good job because they'll get fired. Also, if they listen to the fans, then they wouldn't have fired Mike Vrabel because the fans liked Mike Vrabel. So, again, the fans liked the moves. They didn't like that one. Number two, the idea that an offseason in which the team spent $230 million and that 90% of that $230 million has been underwhelming, whether it's the Calvin Ridley dropped passes, incompletions, complaining about targets. Calvin Ridley's had one good quarter as a Titan. So whether it's that or whether it's Chidobe Awuzie and L'Jarius Sneed hurt again, whether it's that or whether it's Tony Pollard, who's doing okay, but he's certainly not Derrick Henry, they have underperformed what the expectations that the money and the free agent signings were going to be. It's as simple as that. Pro Football Focus says that Lloyd Cushenberry is allowing pressure the most in his career outside of his rookie year. That's not very good. They spent all this money and they still didn't get a right tackle. That's not very good. So to blame the fans, to say, well, they like the move, so you can't be upset with them now, is so incredibly disingenuous. And let's not forget, the people that root for this team, their jobs are not to know who Jermaine Illuminor is. That's not their jobs. You're in the car right now driving home. You're probably a fan of the Titans. You're probably excited. The weekend is ahead. You've got everything that happened that's behind you. Forget about your work week. Shut it off. Let's talk football. Do you know who Jermaine Illuminor is? Jermaine Illuminor is the right tackle of the New York Giants. If you listen to this show, you know exactly who Jermaine Illuminor is. You know he played on the Raiders last year. You know that outside of a really bad game against the Chargers, Jermaine Illuminor was a solid, passable right tackle. In fact, it's hilarious because Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, was taken in the third round of the 2022 draft. Evan Neal was taken 7th overall by the Giants. Evan Neal is on the bench because he stinks, and they knew it. So they signed Jermaine Illuminor, and they signed John Runyon Jr., and, I mean, they went out and signed some offensive linemen, did the Giants. But the whole point of what I'm saying is most people who root for the team spend most of their day thinking about other things that are more in line with what they do for a living. Oh, I work in real estate and corporate development. So at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, are you really breaking down which free agent right tackles might be available for you? Did you know that the Ravens traded their right tackle, Morgan Moses, in a 4th-round pick swap with the New York Jets? No, you don't. Because that's not your job. That's their job. Denard Wilson said yesterday in a press conference, he gets into the building at 4 a.m. every day and leaves at 11 at night. And I heard that, and I said, bravo. But guess what? That's the going rate for what these guys in the NFL do. These guys in the NFL, they have no lives. Are the Titans front office, are they grinding the tape at 4 a.m.? I don't know the answer to that. I feel pretty strongly that they're not. The reason that I bring this up is because, again, every week they have to make a new excuse. Again, last week the excuse was, well, Mike Vrabel made all the picks in 2023, and so don't blame him. But 2024, look at this draft. Rand is killing it. And then the last 2 weeks, Tavondre Sweat's been on a milk carton. I don't. Ian, did you notice Tavondre Sweat against the Lions last week?
Not too much.
No, you didn't. And you didn't against the Bills either. So now we don't brag as much about how great that draft class was. So now we got to find something else. And the new excuse is, well, the fans like the moves. Well, what's the business? Is the business to make the fans happy? Or is the business to win football games? Because, again, he told Chase at the Combine, Rand Carthon did, he said, hey, I don't listen to the criticism. I'm off of social media because I know that my job is to win football games, and if I don't win football games, someone else is going to do the job. And it's easy to say that at the beginning. But what happens at the end is when you sit back there and you say, well, it was all Vrabel's fault now. Oh, wait a minute. What happened if I don't win? I'm going to get fired. It's all Vrabel's fault. Now it's, well, the fans like the moves. The fans like the moves. And by the way, not every fan liked the moves because I complained consistently about L'Jarius Sneed and the health questions that surrounded him. Now, granted, it's not the knees that are keeping him out. It's the quad, but the number one ability in the NFL's availability, and it was a big question with Sneed, and the Titans said, just trust us, bro. And he won't be out there on Sunday. Again. Just trust us, bro. Awuzie, Cushenberry is underperformed. Again, I complained about right tackle. I complained about tight end. I think you got to get a young quarterback at tight end. Nah. We're good. Okay. So, however it may work, whatever you want to say, it's fine. But the excuses are starting to come in, and what's hilarious about the excuses is it's so easy to tear them down. So easy. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll go back to more of your phones, plus what one former NFL general manager said about this upcoming draft, and why I heard this and I said, okay, this is interesting information. We'll get to it next. I'm going to Company 102.5 again. This week's Nashville's best deal is Teddy's Tavern. Go to Teddy's Tavern, your go-to spot for great food, cold drinks, and live music right in the heart of downtown. Get half off a $100 gift card now for Teddy's Tavern at theGameNational.com/deals while supplies last. So I am going to indulge you guys in something that you guys love to talk about, which is the first round pick quarterback that the Titans might take. Now, again, if you want to pick Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, you probably need to lose to the Patriots on Sunday, but that's a different discussion. So I see the YouTube chat, and the YouTube chat's always, oh, Shedeur Sanders. I've seen the photoshopped images of Shedeur Sanders in an Oilers jersey, which, by the way, you know, I like the Oilers jerseys. I think they're cool. I think they're cool to wear a couple times a year. You know, I think it's great to put Oilers in the end zone. You know, it takes me back to the old Tennessee Oilers, the red, white, and blue. Tennessee Oilers going to run all over you. You know, it takes me back to when I was in third grade, and that's great. I don't like it, though, when Titan coaches wear Oilers gear, like during the year. I don't like it when people think that this is like all of a sudden their prime. No. But that's a different discussion for a different day. But I see the Shedeur Sanders photoshopped, and the Tide fans are like, please bring Shedeur to town. Now, I haven't evaluated Shedeur Sanders, and I haven't evaluated Cam Ward. So I can't tell you that I have an opinion on either of them. I'm not there yet. You know, hey, you may win on Sunday and might be pushed back to 7th in the draft, and then you're not going to get either guy. But I was listening to Rick Spielman, former NFL general manager. By the way, it should be noted, Rick Spielman, when he was in Minnesota, drafted Justin Jefferson. And his last first-round pick was Christian Darrisaw. Now, Darrisaw's out for the year with a knee injury. Hate that for him. But a legitimate starting left tackle who was picked one pick after Caleb Farley. Rick Spielman built the core of the Vikings team that they have now. Rick Spielman was also part of the advisory committee that helped the Washington Commanders land on their GM and head coach. So I think he's a pretty bright guy. This was his podcast. It's a CBS podcast called With the First Pick. And his co-host, Ryan Wilson, and they kind of got like a Jared and the GM thing going on. They were doing a mock draft. And Travis Hunter goes off the board at number 1 to Carolina because Rick Spielman thinks that Carolina will stay with Bryce Young, which puts the Titans on the clock at 2. Ryan Wilson's making the pick. But listen to what Rick Spielman, again, a former NFL GM, a guy who, if I owned the team, right now would be at the top of the list as far as guys who may be running the team next year. Here's what Rick Spielman and Ryan Wilson had to say about the Titans on the clock at 2 right now.
All right, next up, I believe it's the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, boy. Similar situation in terms of what you're going to do with the quarterback. Similar draft class. First pick of the second round, or second pick of the second round, Will Levis. He's been injured, so he hasn't really done what they wanted to do. Mason Rudolph hasn't been the answer there. So, oh my gosh, this is already tough. And as you've noted, Rick, I crack under pressure when it comes to getting the right player. But I'm not going to overthink this.
Take Cam Ward. But future,
I'm going to take Cam Ward. I like Shedeur a little better. Cam's 1B for me, but I like the upside of Cam Ward. I like his quiet confidence. I think Brian Callahan will like him as well.
The football future teller is on his game today. I knew you were going to take him.
Okay. Forget about what the other guy said because I don't give a rat's ass what he thinks. But Spielman is sitting there listening and go, Titans are on the clock at 2. I don't know. He's just like, take Cam Ward. If I own the Titans, and at the end of the year I hired Rick Spielman, and Rick Spielman was sitting there with me saying, we're taking Cam Ward, guess what? I'd have to be okay with it. Now, I have no opinion on Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders, but man, the YouTube chat's going to be so upset if the Titans were to take Cam Ward. I'm just telling you right now. And in the same podcast, Spielman said that the only 2 first-round quarterbacks that he sees are Sanders and Ward. But he's saying, take Cam Ward. So, I mean, that holds some weight with me right now that puts Cam Ward in that mix. 615-737-1025. Trey has popped into the YouTube chat. I got to say, he said, so you don't think that the front office thought they had a right tackle with a question mark? Ian, is that, again, so you don't think the front office thought they had a right tackle? Is that his way of telling me that the front office thought they had a right tackle, so that's okay?
Maybe.
I mean, so hold on. I spent all offseason saying, hey, you don't have a right tackle. You need to go get a right tackle. Go get a right tackle. Go get a right tackle. They spent all offseason, no. PT, he can do it. They were wrong. And now it's like, well, who cares? They thought they had a right tackle. Jared, you can't be mad at him. No, they thought they had a right tackle. They didn't have a right tackle, and they should be held accountable for that because it highlights their incompetence. That's the reality.
I mean, it felt like that they were pretty okay with who they had on the roster. At least that's what they said off season, you know?
I mean, they kept saying it. So they must have. He also says, besides Jack Conklin, who was the Titans' right tackle that was good? Well, John Runyon was good. Fred Miller was good. David Stewart was good. There was like a 15-year period where you didn't have a bad right tackle. Probably because the guy who was picking those guys valued right tackle, as you all well know. David Stewart was good. Jack Conklin was good. I thought Dennis Kelly was good, for what you're asking him to do.
For that 1 year, he was solid.
I think he was solid. And I thought Quessenberry held his own.
Okay.
Yeah, he held his own. He was a backup, and he played like a backup.
And then they had
and
Hubbard.
That was okay.
Hubbard, I guess. He was just, whatever.
A backup. But then, and not only that, we got to have a talk about this Hubbard thing. The Giants left tackle got hurt, and they signed Chris Hubbard off the 49ers practice squad. Where the hell are the Titans on Chris Hubbard? Like, they're too good for him now?
Must have been a Vrabel guy.
Okay. Got it. So the one guy that could play was a Vrabel guy, but the other guys, the Jalen Duncan must be a Rand Carthon guy, and he stinks. So, but that's their business, not mine. 615-737-1025 is our phone number on the program. Coming up next, I have a bad feeling about the results that we are all waiting for next week. The Patriot game. We'll get to it next. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Ian, I'm sad.
What happened?
I'm sad. Corey Curtis was on our show in the last hour, and Corey Curtis's hot take on Fireball Hot Take Friday was he thinks the Titans are going to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's right. I think the Titans, and we'll pick it in six-pack picks, and I'll give you a final score. I think the Titans are going to win on Sunday. I think the New England Patriots are just as terrible as you, and I think they're just as terribly run as you are. You know, when the Patriots decided to move on from Bill Belichick, a decision that I didn't have a problem with, did you notice that they didn't really change anything? Elliott Wolf got promoted. He was already in the building. He's now their general manager. Gerard Mayo was their linebackers coach. He's never played anywhere else or coached anywhere else, or he's just been a Patriot, and they moved him up. And so what Robert Kraft did at the end of last year was he just put up a giant sign in the front yard that said, Bill was the problem. And I'm not convinced that Bill was the only problem they had. So a stubborn owner, again, goes with somebody because it makes him feel good. It made Kraft feel good to keep that Belichick Patriot way, even though Belichick is gone. And they stink. Now, they have a quarterback, so at least they're kind of excited. Or they have a young quarterback that could be a quarterback, so at least they've got something to be excited about. But they stink too. And I think the Titans are going to win. In fact, I know the Titans are going to win. Ian, I'm calling it. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I'm calling it. The Titans are going to win on Sunday against the New England Patriots. And I hate that. I hate it. Because as soon as they win, you're going to hear, wow, this was so great. And look at the progress we made. We punted the ball 6 times this week and didn't allow a single touchdown or get one blocked. Brian Callahan said after they won at Miami, who blows with their third string quarterback, Brian Callahan said, winning validates our process. Winning against a minor league team, maybe. So I'm really hopeful that I'm wrong. And I'm really hopeful that the Titans lose on Sunday to the New England Patriots, and I'm going to tell you why. Because the two outcomes we know are they either win or they lose. I guess technically they could tie, and Ian, I got to say a tie is worse than a loss if you're the Titans.
What do you mean?
Well, if you tie, it means you suck as bad as the Patriots, but you get bumped up in the draft order.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean. Yeah.
So, tying is unacceptable. So, if they win, people will say it's a good thing. If they win, there will be a sentiment that maybe Brian Callahan is bringing this team along slowly. We knew there were going to be some growing pains, but did you see how they protected, and did you see how they did that? Did you see? And if Will Levis starts, there'll be discussion about how maybe Levis didn't get enough time. Indianapolis has given up on Richardson. We don't want to be them. And Levis is starting to turn a corner. And they'll be talking about how Bill Callahan has fixed the offensive line. And you'll fall into this giant mix of teams that sits there with 2 wins. You, the Raiders, the Giants, the Saints, the Dolphins, there's so many teams that have 2 wins. The Patriots.
Cleveland.
And then all of a sudden, you're going to be picking 7th overall again. Yay! I don't want any of that. All a win will do is force Titanland, at least for a couple of days, to spend their headspace in the everything's going to be okay spot only because they beat an equally inept team who you're playing at home. Then number 2 is they lose. In a league with bad teams, you lose to the Patriots, you are unequivocally the worst. And I saw Gentry Estes wrote in the Tennessean that the Titans are the worst team in the NFL. And I think many people think that right now, but there's a big argument for Carolina. You lose to the Patriots, there is no argument. You're the worst team in the NFL. You lost to New England with a rookie coach, with a rookie quarterback who is concussed, and a team that actually is rebuilding after 25 years of Belichick. They spent almost no money in free agency on guys outside of the organization. And because of that, the reality of where you stand if you lose to this Patriots team is unavoidable. The vitriol will grow and grow and grow. And they need that. The owner will be thoroughly embarrassed to see a home stadium with nobody there. I think the crowd is going to be terrible on Sunday, which is crazy given how many bandwagon Patriot fans used to show up. Ian, what happened to the bandwagon Patriot fans?
They're losing.
So, I thought they loved the Patriots.
That's what bandwagon fans do. They jump on when you win.
Well, the one thing I will say is we don't know that the bandwagon Patriot fans don't still love the Patriots. Maybe they show up to Nissan Stadium on Sunday.
Yeah, who knows? There could be a bunch of people here from New England.
So I remember the last time the Patriots came here in 2018. I believe that's the last time the Patriots came here. And the Titans just absolutely beat the crap out of them.
The Bruins,
the
Bruins were down this year, and there were still a bunch of Bruins fans here the other week.
There were a lot of Bruins fans here. That is true. But the Bruins, they made the playoffs last year. They had high expectations. But again, in 2018, the last time the Patriots came here and the Titans just put a foot up their rear end in that game. I remember the Saturday night before. In fact, one of my friends from college, he and his wife, he is from New England and is a big Patriot fan. They came in town. They stayed with me. And, we were downtown around Vanderbilt area. And there were Patriot fans in the throwback Brady jerseys walking around Vanderbilt. It's like they had gotten all the way from downtown all the way to Vanderbilt. It had spread. It was unbelievable.
Children of the Corn, like the Big Blue Mist.
I don't know if we're going to see that this week. But again, I think the owner will be thoroughly embarrassed to see a home stadium with nobody there and yet another loss after spending $230 million this offseason. If you lose on Sunday, which is what I am hoping for, you'll be ever closer to cleaning house. Because what is the argument? What's the argument to defend the collaboration between Kerr and Rand and Callahan and Amy and Anthony Robinson and Johnny and Jimmy and Stevie and Scotty? What is the excuse? Can't blame Mike Vrabel if you lost to that team. I mean, the only reason you have a chance to win this game is because that team didn't hire Mike Vrabel to be their coach. And with every loss, especially to a team who you're battling with at the bottom of the standings, a loss gets you closer and closer to the number 1 pick or the number 2 pick, which gives you options. And that's what they need. So I am calling it right now. I think the Titans are going to win on Sunday, and I absolutely hate it. Now, the good news is I thought the Titans were going to win week 2 against the Jets, and I was wrong about that.
You did call that one.
I called the Jets win. I thought I guaranteed it. I called it.
I put it on the calling it list.
I think I called it.
Titans will beat the Jets this week 9-7.
Oof. I think I guaranteed Malik that they would beat Malik Willis. And then that one didn't go. What else do we have on the calling it sheet? We don't call things very often around.
No, the calling it list isn't as thorough as the guarantee list. Before that, Jared says the Titans will only get one Thursday night game, probably versus Detroit, maybe Green Bay. That was back in May. And then you called that Will Levis will be the backup quarterback for the Titans week 1 versus the Saints. You said that back in August of 23. You called that Hopkins would sign with the Titans. We did call that. And you called that the Blackhawks would draft Bedard first overall. That's bold.
Yeah, it seems pretty simple. Yeah, that was not much there. So, again, I think they're going to win. And I'm sad about it. I'm sick about it. I'm depressed about it. I want them to lose. And I think that, again, it's not because I hate the Titans. It's not. I mean, I love the Titans. It's because I think this is in the best interest of the organization. I think it's in the best interest of the organization to have a high pick this year, and I think it's in the best interest of the organization to clean house at the end of the season. And the only way she's going to clean house, she doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to have to say, again, I screwed up. And the only way you get that is if you win 15. You win 4 or 5 games, they'll say, well, we had to take a step back to take a step forward. I know better than that. A lot of people know better than that. But that's what's going to happen. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope Drake May comes in here and looks like the Drake May that I would have drafted ahead of Jaden Daniels this past year. And I hope the Patriots win. Because I think this is what's in the best interest of the Titans. Because I know if they win, we'll hear all kinds of narratives. Like the narrative after the Colts game, that the offensive line actually played better. Yeah, against the 32nd ranked defense without their best player, DeForest Buckner. Whoa. Did you see Devondre Sweat against the Dolphins? Yeah, against Aaron Brewer. Whoa. Any minor accomplishment is treated as if it's reality around here. And that's the last thing this organization needs. 615-737-1025. We are running a poll, and I've got to tell you, I am at least, the YouTube chat won't feel this way, but I am happy about what I am seeing from this poll. But I think they need to lose Sunday, and we need to run it again. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025 the game.
Coming off
as the
of two-
record's gotten poorer, there's a noisy fan base segment that says lose away. They want the better draft capital.
Sure.
There's a small element of that fan base that says that's the plan. They don't only want to see you lose to get it. They think that you're planning to lose to get it.
I understand.
Your thoughts on those?
I understand that, from the outside looking in, that's easy to say when you don't have any dog in a fight. But I'll say this: I've never been anywhere, and I've been on some teams that have lost games. Where at any point that is part of our thought process. That's not for me to think about. If people out there want to think about it, or that's an organizational, they're looking at different things, that's fine. That's their job. But our job is to go put the best product on the field every single week, play as hard as we can, do everything we can to win a game. And I'll always take that stance. That is always what I believe in, for the same reason I just said. There's a bunch of guys where this is their job and their livelihood, and it means something to them. And they put themselves on the line, they put their bodies on the line, they fight through injuries. And at no point would that ever be something that anybody in a football coaching or locker room would ever think about or try to do. That's not how this works for us. There's too much at stake and too much at risk for anybody to do anything other than everything they possibly can to go win a game.
Brian Callahan saying we're not tanking. I don't believe in it. Coaches don't do that. Players don't do that. Good for him. He's right, by the way. Coaches don't tank. Players don't tank. Now, the front office may say, hey, let's go ahead and put all our backups in the second half because we want to make sure we get that number one pick. But they'll do that in week 17. They're not going to do that at the beginning, in November 1st. They're not going to do that. So that's good. We're running a poll right now on Twitter at Jared Stillman. And the poll is, what should the Titans do for the 2025 season? I was actually very proud of this poll. What do you want the Titans to do for the 2025 season? The two options: 1, clean house, or 2, bring the front office / coaches back. Ian, by the way, let me ask you, is it okay if I put you on the hot seat for this if I ask you which way you'd vote in this poll?
Okay. I'd probably vote one more year to come back.
I know you would. Do you really want to hear the same show every day for 2 years?
I mean,
because that is kind of what you're signing up for, right? If by saying you want to bring the front office and the coaches back, you're
only
saying
if the season goes the same way.
Well, I got to ask, do you think it's going to be different?
It could.
$100 million to spend, a number 2 overall draft choice. You think it's going to be different?
Maybe. You never know.
I think I know. Everybody told me I didn't know it this past offseason. And looks like, first of all, you said you never know. You were the one that got it the most right.
This was after the moves. We have to see the moves. Who's the quarterback? Who's the right tackle?
I can't argue with you because you are the most right Titan pundit that exists. You got the draft pick right. You said they were going to take J.C. Latham on the Jim Wyatt list.
Do they take a tackle? Do they make a move for a tackle? Are they going to rock with PT again? Are they bringing in a quarterback? Well,
if they rock with PT again, I mean, it's going to be a nuclear meltdown on this program.
So there's just too many unknowns right now to say that they're going to be this bad again.
Well, I think they're going to stink, so that's just me, but I hear you. So Ian's part of the bring the front office coaches back. 58% of the people right now say clean house. 58% of the people. What I would be fascinated by is what that number will be if they lose on Sunday to the Patriots.
I'm interested, if you clean house, what's next? I would like to know that before just cleaning house, because if you're going to clean house, surely they have a plan. They're not just going to clean house and go from there, right? I would like to know what they had in mind before they do that. But
okay, let's use my let's say it's Mark, or let's say it's Rick Spielman. And Spielman gets to decide what to do with Callahan. He's probably going to fire him, but I do know that Spielman likes Denard Wilson. I think they got to know each other some this summer. So maybe Spielman decides to keep Callahan because he likes his dad and he likes Denard, And so maybe, but again, he gets to pick.
I would
But it's
consider
Rick
it.
Spielman.
I would consider it.
Dominic.
I would also consider that. Yes.
Dimitrov.
Sure. If they do that, but are we sure that they're going to bring in somebody like that, or are they just going to try again with a new GM who's been unproven? I'm not sure.
Which is the NFL way right now, is to, go with, give everybody a first crack at being a GM.
So I don't know. I'm not sure I trust the hiring track record.
It's funny. I feel like, right now I kind of feel like I'm calling the Titans out on their bull crap every day. And I'm hoping to do that so that enough people open their eyes and they say, well, you know what? That's good. Like that's, you know what? Hey, they're right. Ran Carthon did say we checked every box, and he was wrong. Ran Carthon did say that Brian Callahan had a coaching depth chart, and we got the number one choice everywhere. And that has become a disaster with Colt Anderson and the rest of this coaching staff. And, just keep the ball didn't bounce their way, and just constantly bringing it up, because it's like, no. We need to remember these things. These are the bozos that are operating this right now. Chad Brinker and his AI cancer curing model, and L'Jarius Steve. I heard again, and I'm kind of doing that because I want people to know. I want people to know that this is the level of incompetence that your organization is being run, in which that would get people to say, you know what, we need better than this. I am hopeful that at the same time, the demand and desire for an experienced football person to go against the grain of the NFL by hiring an experienced person, which I wanted to do last year, that will be what the Titans decide to do. The hope. And maybe if they end up firing everybody, they might actually listen, because, I hate to say it, but I'm right. Like, I was right about right tackle. No matter how many times they said I wasn't. I was right about the fact that they should have cleaned house after last year, not just fired Vrabel. So maybe they'll be like, hey, Jared was right, and we told Jared he wasn't right, so now let's hear what Jared has to say, and that would be the best thing they could do. Again, 49% of the people in a poll we ran this week, 49%. That has got to be within the margin of error. 49% of the people think I should be GM over the guys that are GM now. That's so bad. That's so bad. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com at 615-737-1025. One texter says, name a single person who says it was Mike Vrabel's fault the Titans drafted Will Levis. You're just making crap up. First of all, after the game is over, the Boohoo Titan crew that comes on the radio and answers the angry people's phone calls, they said, trust me, Vrabel made the picks last year. Just trust us on this. And I heard that on a flight, on an Air Canada flight, where I paid 11 Canadian dollars, which has got to be like $8 American dollars. And I paid 11 Canadian dollars to be able to hear what people were saying after the game. And I heard that, and I was like, oh my God, that couldn't be further from the truth. Again, it's reported Vrabel went to Amy and asked to be GM, and that pissed Amy off. So you think Amy made him GM after that? And again, Ran Carthon was the one who got mad at the media when they asked questions about Will Levis's terribleness at Kentucky, and when they asked questions about Tajay Spears' lack of an ACL in his knee. You think he'd be upset about it if he didn't make those picks? So yes, people are saying that. Derek says it. Say name one person. Says the Titans' problems extend far beyond right tackle. Cornerback, special teams play, and overall depth are much bigger problems. First of all, they're all big problems. They're equally big problems. You have to get right tackle fixed. We've been over it 1,000 times. You have to get right tackle fixed. You have to. But you have to get the other things fixed too. And then they say 3, they're not going to fire everyone. I mean, you know it as well as I do. I have no idea if they're going to do it, consider it not. I think 2-15 gets everybody fired. And that's why I'm hoping for it. And again, when it comes to Callahan, I don't necessarily have to fire Brian Callahan, but I am not going to tell the next general manager that he has to work with a coach, because that's the problem that this organization's had for the last 2 years. So if I'm hiring an experienced football guy, if I am hiring Mark Dominic to be the general manager of the Tennessee Titans, if I am hiring Mark Dominic, I am not telling Mark Dominic who he has to hire as his coach. I will not do it. One texter says, if you clean house, no coach will want this job just to be fired a year later, but I want a better front office. So I hear this sentiment a lot, that nobody will want to coach the Titans if you just keep firing people. Somebody will want to coach the Titans. It is one of 32 jobs. Brian Callahan was getting ready to fly to Carolina for a second interview with the Panthers when the Titans hired him. And the Panthers hired an all-new coaching staff with Frank Reich and fired him midway through his first season. And people still wanted that job. Vrabel interviewed for that job. You want to know what people don't want? GMs and coaches, what they don't want? What they don't want is they don't want to go somewhere where they're told, you have to work with Mike Vrabel as the coach. You have to work with Mike Mularkey as the coach. You have to work with, that's what people don't want. You're like, nobody will want to come here if it's one of 32. San Francisco fired Jim Tomsula after 1 year, and then they fired Chip Kelly after 1 year, and Kyle Shanahan still wanted the job. So stop saying that. And don't listen to anybody who says that, because it's bullcrap. There will be coaches that want this job. There will be general managers that want this job. If you clean house and you say, we're looking, especially the way the NFL treats second-time general managers, I'm thinking off the top of my head, I think the last guy to get a second crack was John Dorsey. When he got fired in Kansas City because he and Andy Reid couldn't get along, and then he went to Cleveland. And he was there for a little bit, and then he got fired there. Like, I think that's the last guy that's gotten a second opportunity. So if you were to say, hey, we're interested in hiring a general manager, but we're only interested in guys that have experience doing it, you'll get a line out the door because these guys don't get other opportunities. Like, that's how this works. One texter, Terrell, says, I think the Titans need to fire Brinker and bring in a new president of football operations, someone who will hold Rand accountable and fix the scouting. This is a performance-based job. Too many friends that are too scared to fuss at them or fire them and then go draft James Pierce. Again, if you're firing Brinker, you're firing Rand. If you're firing Rand, you need to fire Brinker. What I think is going to happen is I think they're going to fire Rand and they're going to keep Brinker. And that I don't want. I want you to fire everybody. I don't want this to be one half step in here, in there. I don't know. I don't want that. Get somebody, again, in here that can run the show. The distinguished gentleman said, Jared wants them to get fired so he can get back in the good graces with this franchise. We all know that. Let me tell you this. First of all, if I wanted to be in the good graces of the organization, I could be in the good graces of the organization. Just look at how Paul Kaharski talks about Brinker and compare it to how he talks about Carthon. Paul never says a bad word about Chad Brinker. I wonder why. Because Paul was on Mike Vrabel's side, and then Mike Vrabel got fired, and Paul, got back in on the Brinker side. Even after he and Rand got into it in Minnesota. It was quite a spectacle. So this idea that, Jared wants to be in the good graces of the franchise. If I wanted to be in the good graces of the franchise, don't you think I would have said, great job, Amy, firing John Robinson in the middle of the season at 7-5. You guys act like I wasn't all over John Robinson's ass about the Caleb Farley pick. You guys act like I wasn't the one saying, do not trade for Julio Jones. Me and Caroline were the only two. And we were like, do not trade for Julio Jones. Do not do it. Do not. Whatever you do, don't do it. And we were the bad guys. So if I wanted to be in the good graces of the franchise, I could be. Now, I'll say this. I think if I did that, I wouldn't have as many listeners because it would be like the sunshine pumping where you listen to it and you roll your eyes. And there's plenty of that to go around in this town. But this idea that Jared wants to be in good graces with the Titans. It's easy to be in good graces. Just say nice things about them, and then you'll be in their good graces. But I don't do that. And I make it, I think I've told this story on the air before, but when I was in Louisville, I was on the radio, and I had gone to school at U of L. And so I knew the athletic director, and I knew the coaches, and I knew and these are people that I had spent time with. These are people I'd gone drinking with. These are people that I had partied with. These are people that I had celebrated championships with. I mean, these are people that I had known since I was 18, 19 years old. And there was one day where a guy by the name of Akoya Gal transferred away from the basketball program. And Kentucky at the time had the best team in the country. It was the year that they went undefeated, and then Calipari, because he always does this, lost in the Final Four. And Akoya Gal transferred. And I saw myself at a fork in the road. I said, I can either be friends with everybody, or I can be like the guys when I was in New Hampshire and I saw the Boston guys and I saw how they commanded the audience and I saw how they told it like it is. So I can either tell it like it is, or I can be friends with everybody. Well, you know what path I took. And I was getting cursed out by people that I had known for a long time. People were upset with me. I'd been on private jets. I had been all kinds of stuff because I was in good. But I decided, no, I don't want to do it like that. And now, I mean, I'm up front with these people. Brian Callahan got hired. I sat down with him. I said to him, I'm like, hey, man, like, I'm going to say what I think, and you may not like it. You may not like it, and you got a problem, you can call me. I've told all the coaches this. You got a problem, you can call me. Now, you may not like what you hear. I'm not going to run on the radio and say, Coach called me and yelled at me about this. But I told Andrew Burnett this. I've told Brian Callahan this. I've told Barry Trotz. I've said, hey, if you don't like something, you can call me. But I know I'm not going to be friends with the players, and I'm not going to be friends with the coaches. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not getting invited to Taylor Lewan's beer parties. I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me. What would bother me is watching the crap shows that we have to watch every Sunday and then coming on the air and sitting back and being like, well, it was a good thing that they allowed Khalif Raymond to almost set an NFL record. And I'm not going to ever do that. 615-737-1025. Fire
How tough has it been to sit in
It's been very tough. I mean, it's my favorite thing to do in the world is to play this game, and I don't want to take advantage of every opportunity that I can to get out there and play, and that's why it was so hard for me to make the decision to not play and why I didn't make it before. So I know that my body at the end of the day is what's going to take me through the rest of my career and help lead this team, and I'm doing my team and myself a disservice if I put myself out there and I'm not 100%.
So Will Levis talking to the media, he's going to play on Sunday. He is questionable for the game. It should be noted, Levis told the media yesterday that it's his call on whether or not he's healthy enough to play. Brian Callahan today said that it was a good week. This is from TD. Brian Callahan said that it was a good week for Levis. He added that he saw the strength come back and that Levis felt good after throwing back-to-back days. Callahan said Levis will be probably listed as questionable for the Patriots. And apparently Callahan also made sure to note today that, and this isn't from TD, but I saw this from somebody else in the press corps, Callahan was sure to note today that it is his decision as to whether or not Levis plays. So Levis was telling everyone, yeah, it's my decision as to whether or not I'm healthy enough. And Callahan today wanted to make sure to clarify, no. It's my decision. Whatever. I find all that stuff to be funny. 615-737-1025 here on our program. If you want to weigh in on this disastrous football game that I do think the Titans are going to win. One texter says, Jared, if you were a betting man, what is your bet on what Amy will do? I agree that cleaning house is a good call, but all that matters is what Amy chooses. What is your gut? My gut is Rand gets fired. Brinker stays the president of football operations, but becomes the chief personnel officer, and Callahan stays the coach. That's what I think happens. I could be wrong, but that's what I think happens.
If you had to pick one to stay, Carthon or Brinker, who would you choose?
Why do I have to choose?
You have to choose one. Carthon or Brinker.
God. See, here's the thing. I think they're both full of it. I think they're both completely and totally full of it. I think they're both snake oil salesmen. I think neither of them knows football. I think they spew nonsense, and then they expect everyone to say, the ball didn't bounce their way. I'd probably get rid of Brinker.
Okay.
I'd probably get rid of Brinker.
Carthon.
And I'll
tell
tell
picks.
you why. I'll tell you why.
Let
I
him
get rid of
cook.
Brinker. I get rid of Brinker because then there's really then the next year there is no excuse making. Like if Amy fires Brinker and blames him for this year, I don't know how she could do that and not fire Rand, but if she did that, then there's no excuse for Rand the next year. Whereas if they fire Rand after this year, then put Brinker in charge of personnel, then they can say, well, it was all Rand's fault. Because that's what they do around here. They say, it was all Robinson's fault. Then they fire Vrabel. It's all Vrabel's fault. So I would fire Brinker. That's just me. Maddie says, why do you think general managers don't get retreads? Personally, I'd rather have a retread general manager and a new coach versus the alternative. It's really funny you bring that up. Nobody knows the answer to this. Chase and Joe asked John McClain the other day. John McClain was like, I have no idea why that is. Floyd interviewed for the Seahawks job and the Chiefs job. And the Seahawks job went to John Schneider, and the Chiefs job, I don't know who that went to. But he interviewed for both jobs and didn't get them, and was a finalist, I believe, for the Seahawks job. And ultimately, I think it was kind of a little bit of a power struggle over there in Seattle between this president who was a lawyer and Pete Carroll and so on and so forth. So I don't know the specifics behind it, but he interviewed for those jobs. Never got a second chance. We had Mark Dominic on the show, the old general manager of the Buccaneers. And I really like Mark Dominic. He's a good guy, but he's really knowledgeable about football. Like when I listen to him talk, there's not these big, just huge, grandiose proclamations like the Titans make here. There's no our analytics are on the cutting edge. What are they? Well, we'll get to that later. But like when I listen to him talk about the research they did in Tampa Bay about top 60 picks, I'm like, wow, I mean, this guy. But we had him on before the draft. And I asked him a question about, okay, well, this is when we were talking about Joe Alt. And I said, if Joe Alt is on the board, if Joe Alt is on the board at 7, and so is Brock Bowers, and he loved Brock Bowers. And I said, if he's on the board and Brian Callahan and Bill Callahan are begging you, you're the GM, and they are begging you, I mean, begging you to take Joe Alt, but you want to take Bowers, what do you do? And he said, the second-year general manager, me at 37 years old, probably would get talked into it by Brian and Bill Callahan. He said the Mark Dominic me that's 52 years old says, we're going to take the guy I believe in, and then we'll figure it out. And I do think there are things that can be learned by really any job and getting a second crack at it. And the NFL is just like, nope, we don't need this for the NFL. By the way, it should be noted, Brock Bowers, the guy that Dominic absolutely loved, is leading the NFL in receptions. Not leading rookies, but is leading the NFL. The other thing I'll say about retread general managers and why I don't understand it. Let's take John Robinson, for instance. John Robinson's problem is he got too arrogant and he made too many moves. He took too many risks. Farley and Julio. And if he gets a second job, you think he's ever going to trade A.J. Brown away again? And I'm not advocating for him to get the job here, but I'm just saying, like, if he got a second job and he had a second A.J., you think he would make the same mistake twice? So that's at least something to keep in mind. 615-737-1025. Got a couple of SEC thoughts. There's a little news out of the SEC. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company on 1025 and 1063 The Game. Want to tell you about Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. And guess what's back? Hiller giving away cash for the holidays, and they are celebrating from now until the end of the year with special deals. Hiller wants to make sure every child experiences the joy of Christmas this year, so they're donating $50 in toys to Toys for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase. And they're giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems, or a $500 Visa gift card with the purchase of any new whole home generator. More deals are online at happyhiller.com. And as always, happy you will be, or the service is free. Those are my guys at Hiller, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, these deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Tune into 102.5 and 106.3 The Game tomorrow for Vandy football. The Commodores will take on Auburn with pregame beginning at 10 a.m., kickoff at 11:45. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at theGameNashville.com. And our college football game of the week is at 2:30 on 94.9 The Fan as Florida takes on Georgia, presented by Twin Peaks. Take your tailgate to Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree drafts and wall-to-wall sports. So, Greg Sankey has sent out a memo. Ian, did you see this? This is kind of within like the last hour or so.
Yeah, I did see this scroll through the old Twitter.
So I would say chalk this up to good intentions, but Greg Sankey sent out a memo to SEC coaches and ADs ordering them to stop directing players to fake injuries and instituting penalties that include on a third offense a coach suspension. He also will fine people for a team's first feigned injury finding. The head coach will receive a public reprimand and a financial penalty of $50,000. The second will be a public reprimand and $100,000. Good intentions. But how exactly is this going to work? Like they're going to see a guy down on the ground and, oh, he's faking a cramp. How do you prove that? I get it. Like, I remember the game where Ole Miss faked all the injuries against Tennessee, and Tennessee threw the mustard bottle on the field. I remember. But how do you actually prove that these teams are faking injuries? I mean, look, guy goes down for a play, comes out, goes back in. It happens all the time. And those are guys that are really hurt. Mike Vrabel used to always say that the injury rate in football is 100%. Everybody's dinged. Everybody's hurt. Everybody's working through something. And I feel like it only takes one time for a coach to tell a student athlete, I don't even know why I say that anymore. They're paying the players. But it only takes one time for a coach to say, no, you got to stay out there because I don't want to get fined for them thinking you're faking an injury. And then that guy actually have like a little, like a high ankle sprain, but he's going to try to play. And then all of a sudden it's a cracked fibula. So I understand the theory behind it, but I don't totally understand how you're actually going to adjudicate it. But at least he's trying. The second thing is Vandy and Auburn. I do want to talk about this game because I'm very, very excited for Vanderbilt. They're 5-3. They are a 6-point dog at Auburn. If they win, Vanderbilt becomes bowl eligible. I would argue if Vandy becomes bowl eligible, this becomes the best Vanderbilt team of my lifetime. That would surpass the 9-win teams under James Franklin that were never ranked in the season because they beat up on bad SEC teams, which is still good for Vandy, but let's be real. And better than Bobby Johnson's 2018. That team didn't beat Alabama. So this would be the best Vandy team of my lifetime. They got to get to a bowl. And if they do, good for Vandy. But my real question is this. What happened to Auburn football? Like last week, Auburn went on the road. They beat Kentucky. And it was like, wow. Wow for beating Kentucky? This is Auburn. And granted, I think Auburn is one of the weirdest places in the country. Because at Auburn, it's like, yeah, we get excited that if we are close to Alabama, but we think we should be winning the championship every year, and the boosters get too involved and they fire the coach themselves. And I have a hard time keeping up with Auburn football and like all of the ups and downs and this coach is cheating on whatever. I mean, I remember we had Derek Mason, the old Vandy coach, on now at MTSU. We had Derek Mason on last year at SC Media Days. And when he was working for the SEC Network. And he came on the show. And, he had done all the other Radio Row interviews, and I'm sure all the questions were like, so Georgia's secondary, do you think they can? And instead for me and him, it was kind of like a reunion. It was kind of like a Howard. I'd been listening to a lot of Howard Stern at that point. Howard Stern does like hour-long interviews with like really famous people and just asks them whatever he wants to ask them. And I am so jealous because I think he does such a good job. But like when you go on Howard's show, you know what you're getting yourself into. And so I've been listening to a lot of that. And I was sitting down with Derek Mason. I was like, we're just going to talk. And I hope it's entertaining. And I thought it was one of the better interviews we've done. But he was talking about how the fact that he had been at Auburn and Oklahoma State. And I said, I was like, man, you went to 2 crap holes as defensive coordinator. And, he laughed about it. I was like, well, I'm not going to say that, but you go ahead. But, I can't even remember the last time Auburn was good. And, again, this isn't some Scarbini school. Auburn's that's a real college. That's a real proud college football program. And yet they're 3-5. And again, I don't understand how they're favored against Vandy. Vandy just went toe-to-toe with Texas. If Vandy was a 6-point dog on the road at LSU, I'd get that. But at Auburn? I'm not sure I totally understand that. But we shall see tomorrow. Early kickoff, so I'm at least a little bit excited about that. All right, Chad Withrow from Outkick joins us coming up next here on the program, 615-737-1025, Stillman & Company. Fireball Hot Take Friday, it's 1025 again. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It is 5 o'clock, which means Chad Withrow joins us from Outkick, presented by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, I am rooting for the Patriots this week. I am rooting. This has to be the worst game the Titans have played in since they hosted Carolina last year and won by a touchdown. And I am thinking about this game and how important it is for the Titans. And I see no upside to winning and all the upside to losing. So just put me down. I think the Titans are going to win on Sunday. But go Patriots. Your thoughts?
So I think fans, it's completely understandable to want the Titans to lose on Sunday. If you're a competitor, you're obviously out there, you're playing to win, or at least you should be. So this is my question for you, Jared. Where does this game rank in terms of just all-time bad matchups at that stadium when you think about how bad this team is and how bad the Patriots are? Because I keep trying to put this game into context. You know, Wisenhunt had a 2-14 season, and I'm sure there was some divisional game at the end of the year where there was someone else bad in the AFC South they went head-to-head with. But it's hard for me to even put into context how little this game means. And I mean that for both teams. Now, I know your argument is, well, if they continue to get blown out or they lose badly, then people are going to realize they're all a bunch of dopes quicker, and that's going to help, eventually get to a new set of leadership for the Titans. But I can't tell you how little I've thought about this actual game this week because it means so little in the grand scheme of things with two just truly horrendous teams.
Well, I'll put it to you like this. My first boss, when I was on the radio in New Hampshire, he does some work for the Patriots on WBZ radio. And he texted me this week. We were texting about some other stuff. And he texted me and he was like, hey, if you want me to come on your show, I'd be able to come on your show to talk about the game. And again, this is like the guy that gave me my first job. This is a guy who, if he was like, hey, I'm coming to Nashville, and it's like, hey, we're putting you up for a week, whatever, that kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, nobody cares. I was like, nobody cares about the New England Patriots. Nobody cares about a breakdown of the game on Sunday. I mean, I already know that the award-winning pregame show is going to be me yelling at Chris and Derek for 2 hours about the leadership of the Titans. Nobody cares. Like this is Wisenhunt ball. And you brought up the Wisenhunt years. Like Jacksonville was pretty terrible with Blake Bortles at quarterback when Wisenhunt was the coach. So I'm thinking this is at that level. But like even last year when the Titans played Carolina at home, the Titans weren't this bad last year. So it's like, well, that game wasn't really that bad. I mean, it was bad and two teams going nowhere, but it wasn't as bad. Think about it. Right now, if the draft were held today, you have the number 2 pick. New England has the number 3 pick. And if you win, you may end up with like the 8th pick, which is another reason why I want them to lose. But I mean, yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen this bad as far as going into it, knowing that both teams are truly two of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, the Panthers game last year, I think it's a good example. The Blake Bortles one is a great one because it's going to be against a division opponent that you see twice a year. That's going to be just the worst, least memorable type of game with two bad teams towards the end of the year. We're not at the end of the year yet with the Titans, but I think we all know how the rest of the season is going to turn out for them. It's truly a horrific game. This is a week when I hear people on the radio or anywhere actually discussing strategy or matchup between the Patriots and the Titans. I kind of feel bad for them because I'm thinking to myself, who cares? That is not the discussion to be having around this team. I don't even know that the coaching staff cares as much about it with these two teams right now, given just the low stakes for both of these teams, knowing at least the Titans didn't know this going into the season, but they know it now. They know they're rebuilding and they're playing for a draft pick. And I think the Patriots pretty much knew that going into the season, that it wasn't going to be pretty and that they were going to be playing for a high draft pick.
Well, I think the Titan coaches care more than the Patriot coaches because the Patriot coaches have Drake May at quarterback, and it looks like, he's what a young first-round quarterback should be, so they'll get time losing and developing him. Here, I mean, maybe they get time. I've said it at 5 wins. If they can win 5 games, which after watching Houston last night on top of 2 Jacksonville games and, you steal one here or there, 5 wins is possible, especially if they win this game on Sunday. I think if they get 5 wins, they're coming back no matter what. If they win less than 5 games, like if they win 2, I don't think she can bring them back. So you start to get to 3 or 4, and then it gets a little questionable. I think these Titan coaches know that too. So I think, Brian Callahan was asked Monday about Amy's patience, and he said you can only be patient for so long, which to me I read as it's running thin. So I actually think the Titan coaches care about this game more than the Patriot coaches, and I would argue for good reason. I mean, Chad, let me ask you this. Do you think that they can come back if they go 2-15?
I mean, I think that they could if Amy decided that she wanted them to come back. I don't think that would be a wise decision to bring them back in that scenario. And I think this game would have been more important for the Patriots had it come a week after Gerard Mayo's comments about his team being soft.
Yeah.
Just to see their response. But they already got that win over the Jets after he said that after the London game. So that was so big for morale and so big for him to show his leadership in the locker room that it didn't backfire when he called his own team soft and they actually responded and won a game. So I 100% agree with you that this game means more to the Titans coaches and the Titans than it does the Patriots for that very reason. Had it been right after those comments, I would make the argument it's equally as big for the Patriots and the Titans. But yeah, I do think that all these games that, at least on paper, either you should win or are very winnable, it's important for the Titans coaching staff to get some of these wins. We talk about this all the time, Jared. It's a league designed to go 500. So when you're either way above that or way below that, there is something exceptional happening. And right now what's happening that's exceptional is really poor leadership and play. Coaching, players, everything, front office. We got to show some progress and a lack of no quit in this team to where we win a few games to show that, hey, it wasn't all bad. We had some bright spots, and we're the staff that can bring this thing back with better players, with better draft picks, all of those things. Because as of right now, there's not a lot to sell if you're Brian Callahan and company or Rand Carthon for that matter.
To Rand Carthon, Chad Withrow with us on the program. What'd you think of his comments in the Tennessee and the lack of accountability? Did not at any point say that they were not where they expected to be, did not say that they messed up in the offseason. And then I thought, which was the cherry on top, the going back to the ball didn't bounce their way, the same excuse he used at the end of last year. What did you make of that?
I thought it showed a real lack of respect for Titans fans and their intelligence. It bothered me, honestly, because it was such a bad comment to make, and it just showed that, at least in that statement, Rand Carthon thinks Titans fans are all idiots. I don't think let's put it this way. You say something like that in a market like Boston with the Patriots, or even in Chicago with the Bears, or in New York with the Giants, and you're catching a lot more flack for that. And I would think people in those positions aren't dumb enough to say something that's so stupid and to treat all of their fans like idiots. And that's exactly what Rand Carthon did with that statement. I was disappointed in it. But if that's how he feels about the fans' intelligence, it's not a great thing for Titans fans to expect it to get a lot better, because it's just so idiotic to act like when you get blown out the way they did, that it's the way the ball bounced type of scenario. I mean, if there's ever a time to fall on the sword and be just completely honest and say, you know what, we got our tails kicked. Not good enough. Nothing is good enough right now. We got to find answers. And I'm pointing a finger at me first, and we're going to turn this thing around, and we're going to find a way to get better. Now is the time to say things like that and not talk about how the football isn't circular and doesn't bounce perfectly. Give me a break.
Or how they're going to rebuild the team with 7th-round picks. Chad Withrow with us. Speaking of Rand Carthon, what do you think of kind of the new excuse that's coming out in defense of Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker in the offseason that they had, which is, well, the fans liked the moves in the offseason at the time. What do you make of that?
It's ridiculous. I had people arguing with me on Twitter on Sunday about this. I really like what Rand Carthon did this offseason. And my response would be, well, why? And the response from them would be, well, because I know the names of the guys they picked and they signed. This is what I wanted them to do, and they did it. I don't know how that's an excuse for someone doing a bad job. well, they did exactly what I wanted, so I can't really complain about it. So I guess they're doing a good enough job. I mean, look, you take chances, you spend a ton of money, and it backfires. And it's not, Jared, it would be one thing if they stayed the same, right? If it was just static. Hey, they lost Derrick Henry, but they bring in Tony Pollard and they bring in Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley, and they bring in these guys. And while they're not better, at least they're around the same. And they didn't do well in the offseason. It did backfire a bit. But when you look at this team and just how much worse they are than last year under Mike Vrabel, that is an indictment on the personnel. It's an indictment on everything. But it's an indictment on the personnel that was brought in the offseason. And the personnel brought in the offseason, last time I checked, unless I'm wrong, because I'm not really even familiar with the organizational chart, I think Rand Carthon's responsible for that as the general manager. So it's not good enough. And for fans to act like, well, I know who Tony Pollard was, and I watched him in Dallas, so I was okay with that move. It's not okay to feel that way.
Well, my biggest problem with it is this. Like, that's not your job. Like, you the fan that has a regular job, that during your regular job at 9 a.m., you're doing that. It's not your job to pick the players for the Titans. So when you're like, well, hey, I know who L'Jarius Sneed is because I watched the AFC Championship game and saw him punch the ball out from Zay Flowers. Like, when you're doing your actual job at 8 a.m., they should be looking over and having meetings with the medical staff about L'Jarius Sneed and whether or not he's going to be available for the games, which, by the way, he's not. Like, that's their job. I don't know where people that do this for a living, that like are in football or have been in football in some capacity, I do not know where they get off on this. Well, the fans liked it when they made the signings, so it's okay. I do not understand that, and it drives me crazy, and I think it's bullcrap.
Yeah, and I think it's also partly a media issue in some instances. And what I mean by that is I'm not blaming the media for the Titans not signing the right guys or for being bad or anything like that. That's on the Titans front office and the Titans coaching staff and the Titans players. They're the ones responsible for whatever product is on the field. But I do think there bears some responsibility, especially with local media. And I was a part of local media in Nashville for a long time, that you at least speak honestly and you question things, and you don't always just go with whatever the status quo is in the Titans media room, that what they're talking about when they're all together, and you don't just repeat talking points from a team, and you actually think critically. I think critical thinking in America is at an all-time low. I think that you could point to a lot of things in politics and show that there's not a lot of critical thinking going on by much of anyone. And I think you can look at sports coverage or sports fandom and show there's not a lot of critical thinking taking place. And I think we saw a lot of that with the media this offseason and throughout this season. And now that it's become so clear that this team is really bad, you're seeing some turn against what they said all offseason and throughout the start of the year, when the job of the media, Jared, if you're covering this team, it's not just to be a wet blanket at all times or, to complain about every little thing. It's to honestly assess what's happening and give an honest opinion. And I don't think that happens enough, especially in this market. And that's a real problem because Titans fans, this is what they're listening to. This is what they're reading. And I think they get overly worked up and they don't think critically for themselves about the team or what's been done. And the result that you get is a lot of people who feel like they've been deceived by the team, when in fact they were deceived by the media they're following because they're just taking talking points from the team.
Yeah. Chad Withrow with us from Outkick, presented by Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa. The hot seat is next. Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, Fireball, Hot Take Friday. Chad Withrow with us from Outkick, presented by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, do you want to go right to the hot seat, or do you have a thought?
Let's go right to the hot seat.
Number one, do you think the Titans are going to win on Sunday? And if they don't, do you think there will be any fallout long-term for the operation of the team as opposed to the short-term somebody getting fired on Sunday night?
Yeah, I do think they're going to win on Sunday. And in terms of fallout long-term, yeah, because this is going to be another domino in a string of performances that just shouldn't be this bad. Because however you lose to this Patriots team, it's bad. It's a bad performance. Whatever happens in this game, it's going to be a bad performance if they lose this game. Now, I think they're going to win, but if they lose, it's just another example of bad personnel, bad coaching, bad team performance, which will ultimately in the long run lead to someone losing their job. I don't know who, but it's going to lead to something happening at the end of the season. Not the next day, not on Tuesday or anything like that, but it will eventually lead to someone losing their job.
Number two, Vanderbilt road dogs at Auburn. One, why is Vanderbilt an underdog at Auburn? And two, what has happened to Auburn football and why is it such a train wreck?
It's amazing to me. You know, Auburn, they go up to Kentucky last week and win 24-10 and run all over Kentucky. But going into that game, there was a very real possibility that Hugh Freeze and Auburn would go 0-8 in the SEC this year. But if they don't go on the road and beat Kentucky, I'm looking at that home game against Vandy. It's a toss-up to me. I don't know how Auburn is a 7-point favorite in that game. I'm picking Vandy and wrong team favorite. I think Vandy's better than Auburn right now. Here's my question for Auburn fans, all right, with Hugh Freeze. I don't know why it's not better than it is right now because their roster's not bad. It's not great, but they do have some talent on that roster. Everything I keep hearing from my Auburn friends is that they're going big in NIL this next offseason. Now, you're really going to see it in this next recruiting class. Well, I think they have 2 5-star guys in the last recruiting class. They've got another one committed for next year. They're supposedly going to spend all this money in NIL in the offseason. I don't understand what the wait is. This is year 2 for Hugh Freeze. So you're telling me you just deferred all the money you have away from 2024 to 2025 and you gave up before the season even started? I can't buy that. So I think this has been a big disappointment for Hugh Freeze. The fact that Hugh Freeze can't find a better transfer portal quarterback. I mean, think about Michigan and Auburn this past offseason. Think about their quarterback situation. All right. At a program like Michigan, and then a quarterback coach like Hugh Freeze, and a program with Auburn's history. And now look at what Vandy did in the offseason.
Yeah.
They went out and got Diego Pavia. So how can Vanderbilt and Indiana, who got the kid from Ohio that's dominating, how can those two programs identify the perfect quarterback for them that leads the program immediately to unprecedented success for each of those programs, but Michigan and Auburn are stuck with their quarterback situation? Michigan's got some guy who just medically retired with a bunch of stiffs around him that they can't seem to settle on any one player. It's a big mystery to me. And it's a big mystery to me as to how Hugh Freeze could let himself get in a situation where Peyton Thorne was going to be the best option at quarterback for a second straight year. Their only chance is to run all over Vandy the way they ran all over Kentucky. I'm not so sure they're going to do that. And what do we know about Diego Pavia? He's going to give you a chance against everyone. May not win, but he's going to give you a puncher's chance against everyone. I really like Vandy's chances to win outright in this game.
Speaking of Vanderbilt, next one on the hot seat. If they win tomorrow, they are bowl eligible. Would this be the best Vanderbilt team of your lifetime?
Oh, no. I would have to go. You know, they're the back-to-back 9-win teams under James Franklin.
Yeah, but that team didn't beat Alabama and go toe-to-toe with the Tech. They took advantage of, like, the Derek Dooley UT teams.
Yeah, I still think even, 9 wins. If Vandy finishes with 6 wins and goes 6-6, it's hard for me to say a 6-win Vandy team is better than a 9-win Vandy team, regardless of who they beat or what's on the schedule. Who did Vandy? I'm trying to remember the biggest team Vandy beat in those years. They beat Tennessee a couple times.
I think the biggest win they had was
years.
At home in 2013. They beat Aaron Murray in Georgia. Now, I think Georgia that year ended up – that was one of those years where Mark Richt won like 8 games, but everyone was pissed about it. So they beat Georgia on like a controversial targeting call at the end of the game. That was back when targeting, if it got overturned, they still kept the 15 yards. And Vandy, I think, won one of those. They beat a bad Florida team. They beat a bad Tennessee team. So I want to say that Georgia at home against Aaron Murray was the best win of the James Franklin era.
Yeah. So let's say it this way. 2012, 2013, they beat Tennessee. And those, you're right, those were bad Tennessee teams. But for Vandy, it's still a win over Tennessee, so it's gigantic. I think this year you had the biggest win in school history over Alabama, right? Kind of came close. There was a late touchdown and an onside kick, and it was a 3-point game. But they played Texas very well. But I wouldn't say that, they were right there to win the game. They beat Alabama. That's the biggest win in school history. But if they win one more and go 6-6, I'm still going to defer to one of those 9-win teams. You could pick one of them as the best team in Vanderbilt history. But this year has produced the best win in Vanderbilt football history.
Is Diego Pavia the best Vanderbilt player you've ever seen?
Say that one more time.
Is Diego Pavia the best Vanderbilt player you've ever seen?
Ooh. Oh, my gosh. They've had some really good defensive players in my lifetime. Jay Cutler was an incredible talent that was on some really bad teams. Jay Cutler never went to a bowl game, right? They were
Correct.
5-6 at best, and I think lost to MTSU at least once, maybe twice, while he was there. Jay Cutler is up there. Man, that's a tough question. Diego Pavia is going to get the edge for me as the best player just because it's such a skyrocket success, and he's only there for 1 year. This will always be known as the Diego Pavia year.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing about, you can't really – Jay Cutler had a career. There are other players who have flashed.
Jordan Matthews was great when he was at Vandy.
Jordan Matthews comes to mind as one of the truly great dynamic players I've seen at Vandy. Earl Bennett was incredible for a time at Vanderbilt. They've had some good offensive players too, but I can't say for any of those guys, that was the Jordan Matthews year or that was the Earl Bennett year. This is the Diego Pavia year. So I think I've talked myself into it, Jared. Yes, Diego Pavia is the best Vanderbilt player I've seen in my lifetime.
Okay, speaking of Vanderbilt, James Franklin and Penn State against Ohio State. Which coach do you trust more in a big game, Ryan Day or James Franklin?
Ryan Day, but it's close. I saw a stat where Penn State is 0 for their last 10 against top 5 opponents. Their last win came in 2016 against Ohio State. And I think Ryan Day is 0 for his last 4 or 6 against top 5 opponents. So something's got to give in this game, which just blew my mind. I think his last win was 2021, I think, or maybe 2022 against a top 5 team. I think there's more pressure on Ryan Day in this game, but I trust Ryan Day a little bit more than I do James Franklin. But it's close. James Franklin's been really good at Penn State. He just hasn't gotten over the hump against Ohio State and Michigan the way that I think Penn State fans would want him to. But when you're beating pretty much everyone else on your schedule, it's still really good. So I like what Franklin's done there. But if you ask me right now, Ryan Day at Ohio State or James Franklin at Penn State, I give a slight edge to Ryan Day in a big game. But I do think that Penn State's going to win this one at home on Saturday.
Tennessee versus Kentucky tomorrow night. What is going to be the end result between Kentucky and Mark Stoops? Signed a big contract extension after he flirted with A&M. Well, he got the A&M job, and then they took it back. But Kentucky fans didn't want to give Mark Stoops that big extension, and they're not very happy now.
I think it's a very awkward relationship between Mark Stoops and Kentucky. I don't know if you watched his press conference this week. I think it was actually his SEC teleconference. It was one of the stranger things I've ever heard. He came on the teleconference almost defeated from the beginning. He was complaining about having to play so many games at night, which, oh, by the way, last week he played at night at home, and they lost 24-10 to Auburn. But he's talking about how much of a disadvantage it is to play at Tennessee at night. He's had to do it 3 straight years and yada, yada, yada. Then he was asked about the health of his team. He said, we're banged up. We're going to have to find some way to compete on Saturday with the team that we have. It just sounded like a guy who was done already with this team in this season. I think he even opened by saying, well, as everyone knows, we're really struggling right now. Didn't sound good from Mark Stoops. This is an opportunity for Tennessee on Saturday night. They need to win big in this game. Yes, just win and survive to get to that first college football playoff ranking and survive to get to Georgia eventually. But this is an opportunity for Tennessee to show out. And I think they need to do it. Kentucky's banged up. They're not doing anything offensively right now. Now, granted, Tennessee hasn't scored in the first half of an SEC game in the last 3, but they need to do more. They need to have some momentum of that second half against Alabama and really come out and show something and win by 4 touchdowns plus in this game. I know they're a 17.5-point favorite. That's what I want to see from Tennessee. I think Mark Stoops in Kentucky, it's a very awkward marriage. I don't think it ends after this year because Mark Stoops isn't getting offered another job, and I don't think Kentucky's going to fire him.
I don't think Stoops has anywhere to go. Like, I don't think Stoops wants to be there. I think Stoops wanted to be at A&M. And Stoops got the job, and then they took it away from him. And you can't say that it was the wrong move because Mike Elko looks to be doing a good job at A&M. But I don't think Stoops wants to be there, and I don't think those fans. Barnhart's always liked Stoops because it was always, football versus basketball, and Barnhart and Cal didn't get along, and so he was always siding with Stoops. Barnhart likes Stoops. I don't think, this is me, I don't think the fans like Stoops, and I don't think Stoops likes the fans. And in most places in the SEC, that doesn't end very well.
Well, it takes one huge win to change minds a bit. I mean, if they were to upset Tennessee, that would change Kentucky fans' minds. But I'm with you. I think there's a little bit of mutual disgust between the two. Stoops has been open about NIL issues. I think there's some real problems, especially when he was trying to go to A&M and couldn't get the job. And yes, Mike Elko has been terrific at A&M. The only thing I keep thinking about is, if what Big Ten job is going to open up that's like bottom half of the league that would hire a Mark Stoops, right? He's got the Iowa connections, but what job would possibly hire him? The Brett Bielema going back to the Big Ten to go to Illinois is kind of the example I keep coming up with. Maybe Stoops could go somewhere like that and have success to their level, the way he had success at Kentucky based off of their low expectations for football. I think he could probably excel in a job like that again. But I'm with you. After the whole A&M deal, after the Florida State back and forth before they hired Mike Norvell, I think both sides, I don't think he's got many options, and I don't think Kentucky really wants him either.
Last one for you. I asked you last week, how interested were you in the World Series? And you and I talked about how we weren't very interested. But then I found myself watching the World Series that night and was into it. I watched it some. I watched the Yankee collapse in Game 5. Wasn't like anybody was talking, did you see the World Series? But, still, I thought it was entertaining for what it was. So a week later, how much interest did you have in the World Series?
So I think I learned something about myself watching this World Series. I have never been the guy that loves a player so much that I root for them when they leave my team or they're no longer on my team. But I found out that I love Freddie Freeman so much, I rooted like hell for him and the Dodgers and the streak that he was on because that dude's just one of my favorite players all time.
I loved it and I hated it. I loved it and I hated it.
I loved it for him. And I'm shocked because usually I still have, as a Braves fan, you're always going to have a little bit of bitterness when someone goes on and does great things elsewhere. But I found myself loving every second of it. And it helps that the Yankees were on the other side, and I hate the Yankees. But I loved it with Freddie Freeman and his performance with the Dodgers. I was rooting for the Dodgers the whole way. I'm thrilled they got it done. And I'm usually not like that with guys who are no longer on my team. Not really like that with Derrick Henry when I watch him with the Ravens or anything like that. But I was like that for Freddie Freeman. So I'm thrilled for Freddie, and I'm happy the Dodgers beat the Yankees.
I'm going to tell you that it will suck when Derek, as much as I enjoyed it for Freddie Freeman, there was still a part of me. And I think Freddie Freeman, again, I've never met him, but as a Braves fan, I think he's like one of the all-time best guys, for how he comported himself over the years he was with the Braves. And those were some bad years. But it's like, if Derrick Henry goes and breaks off a 99-yarder in the Super Bowl and is Super Bowl MVP, that's not going to be fun to watch. It's good for him. I'm happy for him, but it's just not. It's like, why are you still not on my team, Freddie Freeman?
I think, Joe, that my kids are making me soft in my old age. That's probably what's happening. Because I've never been like that before, but I was like that with Freddie Freeman. But I promise that, I'll continue to go hard at those that deserve it. I just don't think Freddie Freeman does. I'm still a huge fan of the guy.
I'm a huge fan too. Chad Withrow from Outkick, presented by Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, great stuff. Appreciate it. As always, we'll talk next week.
Yep. Have a great weekend.
Yep. Chad Withrow joining us from Outkick, Stillman and Company on 102.5 The Game.
No one anywhere across the country, unless they have a bet, is going to tune into a Patriot game. And the amount of teams that are in that category, like you can't watch the Carolina Panthers. You can't watch the Tennessee Titans.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I know they won last week, but you can't watch the Cleveland Browns. You can't watch the Jacksonville Jaguars. You can't watch the Vegas Raiders or the New England Patriots. New Orleans was hopeful there for a second, but they've quickly gone into the territory where you cannot watch the New Orleans Saints.
They've cratered. Those first couple of games, they were putting up 40-plus points.
Can't watch them.
They have the longest losing streak in the league.
You cannot watch the New York Giants.
Oh, yeah, no, they're brutal.
They are brutal.
They're competitive in their games, but they're unwatchable from the quarterback down. That's 8 teams you just can't watch. Can you watch the Miami Dolphins? Maybe. Can you watch the New York Jets? Barely. Okay,
they're rough.
Indy is unwatchable.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
Okay, unwatchable. Okay, so I think there's 10 teams, but somewhere between 8 and 10 teams in the league, I'm sorry, are just flat out nothing to see there, and you're one of them.
Okay, that was Mike Felger from 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. You know, I love that channel. I love that show. That's my show. And so it's actually kind of odd. I haven't really been listening to that show very much, you know, and I'm a big listener, you know, to Boston sports radio. But we've had so much going on here that it's like I guess I haven't been paying much attention to it. But this week with the Titans and the Patriots, I was like, I wonder, are these guys talking at all about this game? Are they talking about how bad the Patriots are in comparison to the Titans? Are they? So this morning, after I did my hit on Robbie and Joe, I started walking around. I was like, let's see what Felger and Maz are talking about. So I went to them and I was listening to their show and they were talking something about the Patriots, but just really the bad state of the NFL and all that kind of stuff. And they started talking about the TV map of this Sunday's game. Have you seen the TV map of this Sunday's game? There's a website, 506sports.com. And if you want to know, for instance, last weekend I was in Toronto and I thought I was going to be flying back early and I'd be able to get home and watch a Titans game, but then it got pushed back and I was flying late. And so in Toronto, they get the Buffalo stations. So I knew that the Bills were playing the Seahawks, so that meant that something could be early. And I know that Detroit is pretty close to Toronto. So I was like, oh, maybe the Titans game will be on TV here. So I go to 506sports.com. And I was looking at, you know, of course, they were not showing the game in Toronto, but I still found a way to watch the first half of the Titans game. Then I went to the airport and listened to the second half. Listening to Dave McGinnis in the second half of that beatdown was actually quite entertaining. I mean, I'm sorry, because he was trying. But you can see the map of what game everybody's going to get. So, for instance, CBS on Sunday has the early game. You know, that's their big game. Denver, Baltimore is the big game. Most of the country's getting that. We are getting a late game because the Titans are on early. So we're getting Jacksonville and Philadelphia. And the Atlanta is getting Jacksonville and Philadelphia. Dallas is getting it. Jacksonville, that area, Panama City getting that. And then Philly up to NYC. They're getting it. So, you know, that's fine. Whatever. So then you go down at the 506 Sports and you see the Fox early game. Dallas and Atlanta is an early game, which, again, that's why Atlanta's getting the late CBS game. That's why Dallas is getting the Jacksonville Eagle game. So you go down. Fox has, 4 games that they have in the early window. Dallas and Atlanta, which most of the country's getting. Adam Amin and Greg Olson are doing that game, which I guess Burkhart and Brady are doing Detroit, Green Bay late, which we're going to get. But the second game, Washington at the Giants, and that is right up in that corridor with D.C., Baltimore, Philly, New York, Buffalo, etc. New England, Tennessee, Vegas, Cincinnati. So what's amazing is for Vegas, Cincinnati, Las Vegas, and Santa Barbara for some reason, Reno, Cincinnati, Louisville, Lexington, Dayton, Columbus, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, they're getting the game. Here are the cities that are getting Tennessee and New England. Nashville, Knoxville. So Chattanooga is not getting the game. Chattanooga is getting the Falcons, which, trust me, I get it. Memphis is not getting the game. Memphis is getting Dallas and Atlanta, which, again, I get it. Then Boston, Portland, Maine, Burlington, Vermont, and whatever the hell HFD is. I'm thinking that's Hartford. Hartford are getting the Patriots. Nobody across the country is getting this game. The only people that are getting this game are the people in Nashville, again, Nashville and Knoxville, and then those random New England cities. That's it. And I think it's amazing. And actually, you know, a lot of people say, well, of course, this is a bad game. The Patriots stink. The Titans stink. If the draft were held today, the Titans would be picking with the second pick. The Patriots would be picking with the third pick. So, of course, they're terrible. But I actually don't think this is a knock on the Titans. The Titans always have small windows unless they're playing New York with Aaron Rodgers or they're playing Dallas or, you know, it's one of those mandatory primetime games where they try to give you a doubleheader so most of the country doesn't have to watch the Titans, but they can watch the Titans. But that's always been the case with the Titans. Like when I was a kid and the Titans were good and they had Steve McNair and Eddie George. And I mean, they were still getting what my dad and I used to call the F team on CBS, Ian Eagle and Solomon Wilcots. Ian Eagle, of course, has ascended to the top. And Solomon Wilcots, I actually have gotten to know a little bit and I really, really like. So we would joke, though, that, I mean, even then you'd get Solomon and Ian, and that was fine. This story's about the Patriots. You know, I mean, the Patriots, and look, we know it was all Tom Brady. And clearly Belichick, you know, when he was 20 years ago, like in the midst of his game, Belichick was a great coach. And Belichick had some real cojones to be able to bench Bledsoe and go with Brady, and they win the Super Bowl, and they build that defense, and then they build it back and win 3 more. Like, look, Belichick obviously didn't end well, but Belichick was great as a coach there. But for it to go completely to zero the way it has, do you remember if you ever went to a Titan Patriot game during the Brady years? Outside of the first Titan Brady game, which was a Monday Night Football game in 2002. Outside of that, every time they came to the stadium, it was probably half Patriot fans, if not more. Like, it was insane how many Patriot fans were coming into games at Nissan Stadium. And the Patriots had become a national brand because of Tom Brady, because of the winning, because of the bandwagoners. And yet here we are 5 years removed from Tom Brady. And it's like it's all gone. It's like outside of the banners that are up there in the stadium, and the uniforms are the same, everything else, the lore of the New England, it's gone. Like, it is zero. And I'm not saying that this game should get a wide national television audience. But if the Patriots had any relevance, surely this game would be on TV in Memphis. But it's not. Surely you'd have better announcers than Jason Benetti. Now, I know Jason Benetti, and I like Jason Benetti. Surely you'd have better announcers than Jason Benetti and Mark Schlereth. I mean, I think that's their lowest level team. On Fox, I mean, because Adam Amin's with Greg Olson, Chris Myers and Mark Sanchez, Kevin Kugler and Moose Johnson. Got Moose Johnson last week. And then Kenny Albert, Jonathan Vilma, Kevin Burkhardt, Tom Brady. I think this is the worst game. And it's amazing that, again, I mean, they color code these things when you look at these charts, and there is absolutely nobody who is tuning in for this game. Absolutely nobody. Like, the color is green on the chart. I retweeted it last night. The color is green on the chart, and there's not even a little speck of green. Nobody's watching this game. And this is what I would say to both teams. Maybe you guys should have gotten off your perch of being holier than thou when it came to Mike Vrabel. Because, look, I was in favor of the Titans firing Vrabel, though I thought they needed a clean house, and the Titans didn't do that. And if I had to pick between Rand or Vrabel, I would have picked Vrabel. But I thought they needed a clean house. But New England, it was like, well, we wrote it into Mayo's contract that he's going to be the coach, so we're going to make him the coach. And it's like, okay, but I can promise you wouldn't be this bad if Vrabel was the coach. And I can promise you if you're the Titans, you wouldn't be this bad if Vrabel were the coach. And if Vrabel were the coach, there might be somebody outside of the cities of Nashville and Knoxville and Hartford and Boston. And Boston's not a small media market, folks. I mean, it's bad. Six-pack picks are next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. right, Stillman and Company, Fireball Hot Take Friday. You know what time it is. It's time for six-pack picks. Ian, you were not here last week. How did we do?
Last week, 5-1.
Bang, bang.
Yeah,
Starting to know who's good.
You got
who's
Notre
bad.
Dame, you got Vandy, you got Washington, you got the 49ers, you got the Lions, you missed LSU. 5-1 last week for a season total of 28, 25, and 1.
Okay, so that was a good week. We needed that good week. Ian, let's start it right away.
Okay, we begin with the best college football game of the week, 11 a.m. on Fox. Number 4, Ohio State at number 3, Penn State. Over-under on this is 46.5. We have Ohio State -3.
You know, it's funny. Chad and I were talking about this, and it was like, who do you trust in a big game, James Franklin or Ryan Day? Like, who do you trust more, considering you don't trust anybody? Put me down for Ohio State. I think that they got that wide receiver, the freshman, that's unbelievable. So, and they were so close with Oregon. So even though Ryan Day could choke it away, James Franklin's just as big of a choke artist. I'll take Ohio State.
Okay, that brings us to our second college game, 11:45 on the SEC Network, and of course heard right here on 102.5 The Game. 5-3 Vandy, looking to become bowl eligible at 3-5 Auburn, over under 48.5. I have Auburn -7.5.
Let me say this. I may look like a total dope for this, but does Vegas not know what Diego Pavia has done to them over the years? He's like the best quarterback in the country against the spread. Vandy they are cooking with some real juice over there. And so I think that this is crazy talk to have Diego Pavia as a 7-point dog against a team that he beat last year, and that is 3-5. Vandy wins outright. Vandy becomes bowl eligible. How dare they disrespect Diego like this? I'll take the doors.
Okay, brings us to our final college game this week. 3-5 Kentucky at number 7 Tennessee, 6:45 on the SEC Network. Over under 45.5. Vols are -17.5.
Oh my God, I literally said the number in my head. I was like 17. I'll take Kentucky. Now I think the Vols are going to win, but I set the number in my head at 17, and I was like, if it's a 20-point spread, I'm going to take Kentucky because the spread's so high. If it's a 11-point spread, I'm going to take Tennessee. I think they're going to win by 17. I think they're going to screw everybody that takes the Vols to cover because they'll win by 17. Put me down for 17 for Tennessee. So I'll take Kentucky, but the Vols are going to win. And what a gong show they have on their hands between the Kentucky fans and Mark Stoops and Lexington.
Okay, that brings us to the NFL slate this week. Also kind of weak. This first game, though, should be pretty good. The 6-1 Lions at the 6-2 Packers. We'll see about the status of Packers quarterback Jordan Love, questionable with a groin injury. 3:25 on Fox. Over under of 47.5. Detroit is -3.
Yeah, I'll take Green Bay. And I think like a mano-a-mano Detroit's better. And if Malik plays, I'll regret this, but I'm going to take Green Bay because Detroit has not played a game outdoors this year. It is November at Lambeau Field. I will take the Packers.
That brings us to the Sunday night game, 7:20 NBC. The 4-4 Colts at the 5-2 Vikings. Joe Flacco under center for Indy. Over under of 46.5. Your boy Sammy D and the Vikings are -5.
Boy, isn't this telling that this game got flexed into Sunday Night Football and that this is the best game they could come up with? How many bad teams there are in the league? I almost wonder, too, if there was like the league came to the Colts and said, we need Flacco. Like, we can't put Anthony Richardson throwing for 112 yards on 4 completions. We can't have that. I don't know. I'm just saying that I think Minnesota wins this game. I think Indy's bad. I think they're bad. Flacco gives him a puncher's chance because Flacco's not, he's still got some game in him. But I think Indy is bad, and because of that, I am going to take Minnesota, and Minnesota's come on some tough times, so give me Sammy D and the Vikes.
Okay, that brings us to our last game here. The 2-6 Patriots are coming to town to take on the 1-6 Titans, noon on Fox. Over-under, lowest of any game on the week of 37.5. Titans -3.5.
Titans are going to win. And I think the Titans are going to win by 4, so I'll take the Titans. 17-13 will be the final. New England got called out by their coach last week, and they responded with a victory. against the Jets, which means this week they'll go back to being the same old crappy Patriots that they've been all season long. Drake May, questionable with a concussion. I think he's going to play. You know, my hope that the Patriots will win rides on Drake May's shoulders, but I don't think it'll be enough. The Titans know they have to get this game. Like, they know they have to win, and that there is no option to lose this game, or else everybody's probably getting fired. Titans 17, Patriots 13. That's it for us. Jake and TD are next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody Monday at 2 in the award-winning pregame show, Sunday at 9:30.